I left my sound at max on the phone accidentally and watched an 18+ video on bath. My name is Jessica. I am 20 years old. I live in Florida. I had a very rough background because my mom died while I was 15 years. The death brought me a lot of pain. 5 years after, I am yet to recover from the death of my mom. I haven't forgiven my dad since my mom died because he was among the causes of my mom's death. The doctors confirmed that my mom died as a result of internal bleeding. My dad was a drunkard. He usually comes home drunk every day. My mom kept telling him to stop, but he didn't. One day, he came home drunk. My mom talked to him like she used to anytime he comes home drunk. I didn't know what came over him that day. He hit my mom. He hit her severely that she had to be rushed to a hospital. After 3 days, my mom was discharged from the hospital, but she was still not 100% okay. She fell sick again, but she didn't go to the hospital early. When she died, the doctors carried out an autopsy on her. The result of the autopsy showed that she died of an internal injury that she sustained when my dad raised his hands on her. My dad was sorry for his action, but the deed has already been done. He was charged with manslaughter, but he was later released after spending 2 months in prison. 3 years after the death of my mom, my dad remarried. He married a woman from Florida. He invited only a few people to the wedding ceremony because he didn't want people to know that he was getting married. I didn't get to meet the woman he married until the night of the wedding when she came home. She came with a 12-year-old boy that has another father. I didn't want to live with them, but I had no option. I graduated from primary school a few days after my dad's wedding. 6 months after, I enrolled in a high school. When I got to high school, I made a lot of friends. After closing from school, I will go to my friend's place. Sometimes, I will be there until late in the evening before I returned home. I was just happy with anything that will take me away from my dad's wife. One day, I came home very late. My stepmom was curious to know where I was coming from. She started ranting in the sitting room that I am fond of going out and returning late. She said I am a small girl and that is not good for me. From the bottom of her heart, I knew her advice was good. But she wasn't doing it with good intention. She intended to spike my father up against me. She continued ranting in the sitting room. She expected my dad to say something, but he didn't. He kept looking at her. When he finished eating his food, he went straight into his room. The next day, my stepmom's son Philip saw me sitting in the sitting room and he sat close to me. At first, I wanted to leave his sight, but I noticed that my dad was looking at me, so I kept my calm. A few seconds later, my dad walked away from the sitting room. Philip noticed that I was waiting for my dad to leave the sitting room so that I can walk away from him. Therefore, as soon as my dad walked away, he started begging me not to leave. I asked him why he was begging me. He said he knows what I wanted to do. I asked him what he claimed to know. He said he knows I want to walk away from him. He said I should not do that. I asked him why I should be sitting with him when we have nothing to discuss. He said he has something to discuss with me. I said he should say whatever he wants to say because I am listening. I was already up from my seat when I was talking. He pleaded with me that I should sit before he can say what he wants to say. For a while, I told myself that I do not need to transfer the aggression in me to him. I thought within myself that he wasn't the one that offended me. I sat as he instructed and I told him to say what he wants to say. Philip started by apologizing. He said he knew his mom went overboard yesterday. He said since his mom came to the house, we have been living like enemies. He said it's not supposed to be like that. He said we are all living in the same house, so we should live like one big family. He said there is no gain in living like enemies in the same house. I sat down for a while and thought about what he said. I thought within me that everything Philip said was the truth. I said to Philip that I understood everything he said perfectly. I said I don't have any issues with his mom. I said I just feel like his mom doesn't like me. I told him that I think that his mom sees me as a threat. He said his mom does not see me as a threat. He said his mom is a very nice woman. He said the issue I am having with his mom was because I have not fully understood who she is. He said once I understand her perfectly, we wouldn't have issues again. He said he would talk to his mom and make her see the need to live as one happy family. He said he knows his mom will listen to him. I told Philip that I don't have any problem with his mom. I said if she is ready to live with me peacefully, I will also live with her peacefully. Philip left the sitting room and went into his mom's room. I didn't know what he told her, but I believed he told her about the reconciliation. 20 minutes after, Philip and his mom walked into the sitting room. I didn't look at her face because I was still angered by what she did to me the previous day. She then sat close to me on the couch and asked for forgiveness. She said she knew we haven't been living as a family since she came into the house. She said she knows that the fault is from her. She said she is ready to make amends and make us live like one big family. I was happy to hear that. I told her I don't have any issue with her. I said she is old enough to be my mom. Therefore, she ought to take me as a child. I said she ought to treat me the same way she treats her son Philip. She said I should forget what has passed and let us start a new chapter. I told her that I heard everything she said. She said to prove to me that she is happy with me, she will cook anything I want for dinner. I told her to prepare what my dad wants rather than what I want. She said my dad doesn't have any issue with shat she cooks. She said my dad eats whatever she cooks without complaining. She said I have to mention what she will prepare for dinner. I told her to cook fried rice and chicken. She said my chicken will be the biggest. She left after I told her what to cook, but Philip remained in the sitting room. Philip and I discussed a lot of things. He asked about my academics and other stuff. He urged me to show him anything that I have been taught in school that I do not understand. At exactly 7 p.m., my stepmom served dinner. She sent Philip to call my dad, who has been in his room since morning. When my dad came to the dining, he was surprised to see me eating in the dining with my stepmom and Philip. Before we settled our dispute, I do not eat in the dining. Anytime I am served my food, I either eat it in the sitting room or my room. Another thing that surprised my dad was the way Philip and I were talking while we were eating. My dad was forced to talk. My dad said he cannot understand what is happening in the house. He said whatever it is, he is happy with what he is seeing. He said this is how we are supposed to be. He said we are supposed to be one happy family. My stepmom told my dad that we have settled all disputes and we are now living as one big family that we are. My dad was very happy. He said my stepmom has just made his day with what she told him. He said what he heard calls for celebration. He said we should all prepare to go to the beach the next day. Philip and I screamed when we heard about going to the beach. None of us have gone to the beach before. I have been hearing about how fun the beach is, but I haven't had the opportunity to go. So, when my dad mentioned the beach, it was as if he knew what I wanted. After dinner, we all went into our separate rooms and slept. Philip and I woke up very early the next day in anticipation of visiting the beach. After taking my bath and putting on my dress, I went to check on Philip in his room. When I go to his door, I knocked and Philip answered. Philip said I should wait for him in the sitting room because he is taking his bath. I walked back to the sitting room and sat alone. I put on the television because I was bored and there was no one to talk to. 10 minutes later, Philip joined me in the sitting room. He was looking very handsome. He sat close to me and we watched television together. 20 minutes later, my stepmom and my dad came out of their room. My stepmom was already prepared while my dad was still not prepared. My mom went into the kitchen so that breakfast will be ready before my dad finished his preparation. 20 minutes later, my dad came out prepared. No sooner had he sat down in the sitting room than my stepmom called us to the dining. We ate breakfast as a family. After eating breakfast, we walked straight to my dad's and drove off to Miami Beach. We left home at exactly 10:20 a.m. and we arrived at Miami Beach at exactly 11:50 a.m. Miami Beach is a good sight to behold. It has a beautiful environment. Fun seekers from all over the world were gathered at Miami Beach. We had a lot of fun. Philip and I played in the water. We ate a lot of things that were sold there. The beach was in a carnival-like mood because it was during a public holiday. We ate together and drank together. We took photographs together too. We enjoyed ourselves as one big family. We left Miami Beach at around 6 p.m. We got home around 7:30 p.m. When we got home, we sat in the sitting room and talked about our experiences at the beach. My stepmom did not bother to go to the kitchen because we had already eaten to our satisfaction at the beach. At exactly 9 p.m., my dad left us and went to his room. A few minutes later, my stepmom stood from her seat and walked to her room. Philip and I continued our gist after they left. We chatted until 11 p.m. before we both went to our respective rooms. I was happy throughout that week. When I got to school on Monday, I told my closest friends what happened in our house. It surprised them a lot because they didn't know that my stepmom could be that nice. My closest friend Evelyn promised to visit me by the weekend to have a feel of what our home looks like presently. When I got home on Friday, I told my stepmom about Evelyn's visit. She was very happy to hear that Evelyn was visiting. She said she has a place to go on Saturday, but she will wait for Evelyn's arrival before she leaves. Evelyn arrived at our house as early as 9 a.m. She ate breakfast with us. After we ate breakfast, my father was the first to leave the house. He said he wants to visit his childhood friend Mr. Patrick. He said it's been a long time he saw Mr. Patrick. 15 minutes after he left the house, my stepmom left too. She told us to take very good care of ourselves. She said we should make sure the house is tidy before she returns. When she left, Evelyn and I went to my room while Phillips remained in the sitting room. Evelyn and I chatted for hours. We talked about school, careers, and many other things. At exactly 2 p.m., Evelyn told me she wanted to leave. She said she doesn't want her mom to start calling her cell phone number. I followed Evelyn to the gate. We hugged each other and we waved at each other. When I returned to the sitting room, Philip was still sitting there. I sat on the couch in the sitting room and we started chatting. Philip began to ask me about my friend. He asked me how I met Evelyn and I told him that she is my classmate, and my closest friend in school. He asked me a lot of questions about Evelyn and I gave him answers according to what I know about her. The last question that Philip asked that made me realize that he had an interest in Evelyn was when he asked me whether Evelyn has a boyfriend. I said since I know Evelyn, I have never seen her with any man. I said we used to talk about men like girls do, but none of us has a girlfriend. He said what if she has and I don't know. I said Evelyn is my classmate and my closest friend in school. I said there is nothing that Evelyn will do that I won't know about. I said if she has a boyfriend, I will be the first person to know. After I answered him, I asked him why he asked me all those questions about Evelyn. He said it seems he likes her. I asked him if it seems he likes her or he likes her. He said he likes her. He said he wants me to help him talk to Evelyn since we are friends. He said Evelyn will listen to me better than him. I said I will do my best. He promised to buy me a very nice gift if I talk to Evelyn on his behalf. He asked me what I want as a gift. I said I want iPhone 12. He said if I am available to convince Evelyn to date him, he would buy me iPhone 12. As soon as I heard that, I started thinking of the strategy that I will use to win Evelyn's heart for Philip. I didn't want that iPhone 12 to pass me by. The next day in school, I took Evelyn to the school's restaurant during the break. I bought her chicken and wine. After she finished eating the chicken and wine, I told her that I have something important to tell her. Evelyn said she knew something was fishy when I bought an expensive chicken and wine for her. She asked me what I wanted to tell her that made me spend an expensive amount on buying chicken for her. I said I want to tell her about my stepbrother Philip. She asked me what happened to Philip. I said since the day she came to our house, Philip has not allowed me to rest. I said Philip has been disturbing that he likes her and he wants to date her. As soon as Evelyn heard that, she busted into laughter. She said she laughed because Philip saw her that day and he didn't tell her anything. She said if he loves her as she claims, he should have been the one to approach her. I told Evelyn that Philip that I know is very. I said he doesn't have the charisma to talk to a girl. I said that doesn't mean he is weak. He is just like that. I said to Evelyn that she cannot find anyone better than Philip. I said he is the best she can find anywhere. I reminded Evelyn about the role that Philip played in reuniting our family. Everything I was doing was because of iPhone 12. Evelyn said she has heard what I said. She said she will take her time and decide on what to do. She said she will get back to me with her final decision. I told her that I will be waiting to hear from her. While we were going home on Friday, Evelyn said she will come to our house the next day so that she can see Philip for herself. She said if she sees him, maybe he will be able to talk to her himself. When I got home, I met Philip in the sitting room as usual. I told him that I have talked to Evelyn and she has decided to visit us the next day. I said he should do everything to convince her. I told him that I have done the difficult part of the job. I said what is left is just for him to add to what I have done. I told him that the main thing Evelyn wants is to hear it directly from him. I said if he tells her himself, she will accept immediately. Philip thanked me. He said he will do his best to convince her when she comes too. While I was walking into my room, I kept remembering Philip about his promise. Philip said if Evelyn agrees to date him when she comes tomorrow, I will get my iPhone 12 by Monday. Evelyn came to our house at exactly 11 a.m. on Saturday. When she entered the sitting room, I deliberately excused myself from the sitting room so that I can leave her with Philip. I went into my room and hid behind the door so that I can hear their conversation. 5 minutes after I left, Philip and Evelyn were looking at each other without saying anything. The anger that was in me from where I was watching them couldn't be quantified. After some time, Philip began to initiate a conversation with Evelyn. He started by asking Evelyn about her academics. Evelyn answered him well. Next, he moved to what Evelyn likes and what she dislikes. Evelyn said she likes reading and traveling. Philip said he also likes reading, but he doesn't like traveling. He said he is always afraid of an airplane. Philip moved closer to Evelyn and began the main conversation. He asked Evelyn if I have talked to her about anything. Evelyn told him that we are friends, so we talk about a lot of things. Philip said what he was trying to ask her was whether I have talked to her about him. Evelyn said I have talked to her about him, but she wants to hear it from him. Philip said if she wants to hear it from him directly, then he will say it. He told Evelyn that she captured his heart since the first day he saw her. He said he has seen a lot of girls, but she is so special. He said she is better than all the girls he has been seeing. Evelyn smiled. She said that is how a lot of guys do when they want a woman. She said if they get what they want, they will change their attitude. They would forget about all the promises they made when they were wooing the girl. Philip said he is not like that. He said he is ready to stand by his words till the end of time. He told Evelyn that he loves her and he wants her to become the mother of his unborn children. I could not be more proud of Philip from where I hid. I was enjoying the way he was putting his sentences together. After going back and forth, Evelyn said she has heard what he said. She said she will look into what he said and she will give him a reply as soon as possible. A few minutes later, I came out from where I hid pretending like I didn't hear everything they said. As soon as I entered the sitting room, They kept quiet as if they weren't talking before I came in. After a few minutes, Evelyn told me that she wanted to leave. I asked her why she was leaving so early. She said she has some laundry to do at home. She said she will also help her mom in the kitchen. When she walked out of the sitting room, I followed her immediately. I asked her whether Philip was able to talk to her. Evelyn said Philip told her what she wanted to hear. She said she was very impressed with the way he put his sentences together. She said she likes him. She said she wants to take her time before she gives him a reply. I quickly interjected when I heard that. I said she doesn't need to keep Philip waiting anymore since she claims she likes him. Evelyn left after we talked at the gate. I hurriedly walk into the sitting room so that I can talk to Philip too. As soon as I entered the room, I walked straight to Philip. I asked him how it went. I pretended like I didn't know what happened. Philip said he knows my friend would have told me what happened. I lied to him that I didn't ask her because she was in a hurry. Philip said he was able to express his feelings to her. He said he told her his mind and he hopes she will yield to his demand. Philip said Evelyn promised to get back to him as soon as possible. Before I left for school on Monday, I made up my mind that I will do everything to convince Evelyn so that she can quickly yield to Philip's demand. Since Philip told me about the iPhone 12, I have been dreaming of it. After the assembly, I quickly went to Evelyn's sit so that another person won't sit close to her. As soon as I sat, I started my motive. I told her to talk to Philip as soon as possible. I said she should possibly give him a reply today. Evelyn wanted to know why I was trying to rush her. I said Philip is a good guy and he deserves the best. Evelyn said she will come to our house during the weekend. She said she wants to tell him herself. I was so happy when I heard that. When I got home, I told Philip that Evelyn has agreed to date him. I said she would have called him to inform him, but she doesn't have a cell phone. I told him that Evelyn promised to come during the weekend so that she can inform him herself. Philip said if Evelyn comes on Saturday and says what he wants to hear, I will get my iPhone 12 on Sunday. As soon as I heard that, I started dreaming of Saturday. I would have moved that Monday become Saturday if I had supernatural power. As the days were going by, I was just anticipating Saturday. Finally, the day I was waiting for arrived. Evelyn called me at exactly 9 a.m. that she was on her way. When Evelyn arrived at our house, she met a full house because my parents were still at home. A few minutes later, my dad left for work because he had an emergency. 1 hour later, my mom told me to follow her to the mall to get some stuff. We all left the house leaving Philip and Evelyn. When we left, Evelyn told Philip what he wanted to hear. After telling him, they had explosive sex. When we returned home, we met them in the sitting room watching television as if nothing happened. 1 hour after my mom and I returned from the mall, Evelyn told me she was leaving. When I followed her to the gate, she told me that she has told Philip that they can start dating. When I returned to the sitting room, I started whispering to Philip about my iPhone 12. At exactly noon on Sunday, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened the door to see who was at the door, I met Philip standing in front of my door with an iPhone 12. I screamed very loud when I saw my new phone. As soon as I collected it, I took it to my stepmom and my dad. They were so happy for me. I didn't know that Philip bought 2 phones until the next day when I was going to school. As soon as I walked out of the gate, Philip called me back. When I went to him, he gave me another iPhone 12. He said I should give it to Evelyn. I became speechless. I was just looking at Philip without saying anything. I was wondering how happy Evelyn will be when she sees her new phone. When I got to school, I told Evelyn that I have a big surprise for her. She wanted to know what the surprise was, but I wasn't ready to tell her immediately. I told her to guess what the surprise might be. She did all the guessing, but she didn't even come close. After some minutes, I brought out my iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn became speechless. She didn't see me with an iPhone when she came to our house on Saturday, so she was wondering how I got an iPhone between Sunday and Monday morning. I told her that it was Philip's that gave me the iPhone 12. She was speechless. She said she didn't know that Philip is that generous. I told Evelyn that the surprise I am talking about is not my iPhone 12. After some minutes, I brought out her iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn was shocked when she saw me with another iPhone 12. I said this one is the real surprise. I handed the phone over to her and I told her it's a gift from Philip. Evelyn was speechless. She was wondering how she could get a big gift from someone she just started dating a few days ago. We took pictures with our phones. I snapped Evelyn with her phone while she snapped me with my phone. Evelyn and I enjoyed using our phones. We use it most times in school. Most times, some of our friends used to come to us to borrow our phones to snap pictures. Because of that, a lot of pictures were stored on our phones. I was with Evelyn one day when she told me about what happened between her and Philip on the day she came to our house. She told me how she and Philip had sex. She told me how good Philip was in bed. When I got home that day, I wanted to ask Philip, but I cautioned myself. Since then, I have been looking for a way to have a taste of Philip. I wanted to experience what Evelyn experienced. My urge for sex with Philip led me to download porn videos on my phone. I started watching 18+ videos uncontrollably. The next Saturday, my dad and my stepmom attended a wedding ceremony, leaving only Philip at home. Because I was bored in my room, I came to the sitting room to watch television. I did not enjoy the programs on display. Therefore, I connected my phone to the speaker. The videos on my phone were playing one after the other. The speaker's sound was at max. Therefore, Philip heard what was going on in the sitting room. A few minutes later, I left the sitting room to take my bath while the videos were still playing. As soon as I started bathing, I heard the porn video on my phone playing in the sitting room. I had soapy water all over my body, so I couldn't rush out. I hurriedly took my bath and rushed out to stop the video that was playing. When I got to the sitting room, I met Philip. I couldn't say anything. He looked at me surprisingly. Philip was wearing short trousers, so I could see his anaconda. As soon as I saw Philip's anaconda, I remembered what Evelyn told me. I knew it was my time to enjoy what Evelyn enjoyed. I moved closer to Philip and I grabbed his anaconda. Philip didn't resist. You could tell that it was what Philip has been dreaming of. We kissed and romanced each other right there in the sitting room. After 20 minutes of romancing, we went to my room and had proper sex. The sex was explosive. I saw what Evelyn told me myself. After that day, Philip and I continued to have sex until we both got married. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
Hi guys, my name is Anita, and I am 17 years old. I am energetic and passionate about life. I hate to be on the losing side. I have experienced a lot of things that a girl my age shouldn't experience. I can't say that I lack the basic amenities of life. No. On the contrary, I have always had the things I wanted. Some of which were provided to me by my father, others, I was made to get myself by my mother. One could envy me from a distance, but when you come close to me and come into my world, you will discover that all the happiness, love, joy, and care were just an illusion, and my open world is not one you would desire. I had money but lacked the attention of my parents. Yes, our home was broken. I am the product of divorced parents, whose relationship was a mistake on the part of my dad and manipulation on the part of my mom. I stayed with my mom, who never really cared how I was doing except when she needed to use me for her games. My dad would trade anything just to be with me, but my mom kept me as leverage. Dad never knew the real me, and mom didn't care. I'm sure that if my dad knew what his ex-wife was turning his daughter into, he would fight tooth and nail just to make sure I was taken away from her. Mom had us relocating on a constant basis, and so, I never had a steady life. I never had regular friends. I was here today and gone tomorrow. My academic life was as good as dead. I was no better than a dropout. We had to change schools frequently too, and wherever we went, Mummy made me lie that my dad was dead. This was something I never told Dad. People seemed drawn to me out of compassion. The girl who lost her dad. There was a time when I usually found myself wishing that things were different. As a growing child, I would find myself wishing that I had parents who could see eye to eye. It was just too much for me. I am who I am today because of my mom. And I am not grateful to her. She exposed me to the realities of life faster earlier than necessary. I can clearly remember the first day I saw people having sex. It is a memory I guess I would live with for the resting my life. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to wipe it off my mind. I can vividly remember coming back home from school really tired, wishing I would just for once run into the loving arms of a mother, only to have my dreams broken. I got home that day and found the door locked. Ask went by the window, I saw what I hate to remember. There was my mom used by 2 men. I was horrified at my bones. I couldn't move. I just stood looking with tears pouring out of my eyes. After about 10 seconds, she turned her head, only to find her 12-year-old daughter crying. I ran away. I didn't know where I was running to. I just kept running. I didn't care where I was running to. I just wanted to run away from what I had just seen. I was broken. I was bitter. I didn't know when I finally ran back to school. I would rather stay in school than go home to such torments. I don't know how long my mom looked for me. I don't even know if she ever looked for me, but she came to pick me up after management called her. On our way home, she tried acting nice. I can't remember the excuses she made, but she somehow made me promise not to tell Dad about it when next we spoke. Although I promised to keep the secret, that night, I was broken. Until then, Mom had been like an angel in my eyes. Spotless, a sweet soul. How she could stoop so low to do such a thing was something I couldn't tell. I tried crying myself to sleep because the nightmare was happening with my eyes wide open. I prayed that it would just be a bad dream once I woke up. Very early the next morning, Mom actually started acting like nothing bizarre happened. She seemed like the mom I had known, but no matter how hard she tried, the wound was fresh, and it would take us a long time to heal. That ordeal was the first of many. Soon, she got tired of hiding her shaft deals from me that I got used to seeing various men at our place. Why Mom chose to live that kind of life, I could not tell. When I grew older, I understood why she tried her best to beat poverty. My mom was from a poor background. Her parents were extremely poor. It was so bad that they had nothing but hatred towards her when she was given birth. Her parents hated her for coming into the world. They cared less if she lived or died, and she was usually at the mercy of the good-hearted people of the community. She never knew what it meant to be loved. Although they shared the same house, everyone lived on their own. Her father lived for himself. Her mother lived for herself. Her sister lived for herself. Her half-brothers lived for themselves. Nobody cared for anybody. If anyone was sick, nobody cared. If anyone died, nobody cared. I learned that Mom once ran away from her home for 3 days, and nobody cared if she was alive or not. The hatred was too much in the family. It was really a dysfunctional family. The parents had resentments for the children, and the children reciprocated the same gesture. It was regular to find her father fighting with her half-brothers over money, or Mom was seen fighting her mom over something trivial matter. Her parents were often heard saying that their biggest regret in life was the failed abortion of all their kids. There was a time when my mom fought with her mother over a man. Her mother claimed that she was now going after her clients. Yes, Grandma slept with different men in the same bed she shared with Grandpa. The fight between Mom and Grandma was nothing new, but the comments made by Grandma fueled the hatred Mom had for her. Grandma told Mom that she would never amount to anything in life. Mom said to her that being nothing in life was better than ending up like her. However, she vowed to be better than her mom. The neighbors were constantly entertained by the family drama. Mom's family was everything terrible you could imagine. It was a jungle, and everyone lived like an animal. The school was not an option for the children because nobody was going to pay, so each child learned to fend for himself from an early stage. Mom was really smart. It seemed as though she was the smartest of all the children. She knew that sleeping with boys who were wallowing in poverty just like her would only turn out bad for her, so she decided to go for those who were better off than she was. She was going to go for the educated and wealthy. She soon started visiting bars and brothels where they were high and mighty patronized. Her game plan was to make a rich client develop emotional feelings towards her, and by so doing, she got him wrapped around her fingers. However, she soon discovered that nobody was willing to form a bond with a harlot, so she decided to take a different route. That was when she met my dad, Tony. Tony was from a wealthy family. He was from a good home. He had me raised with a high level of moral standard, and his parents had lots of expectations from him because he had been given a lot. He had a religious upbringing, and he was never allowed to do the kind of things other kids did. He didn't date girls, he didn't go for parties, he was just made to focus on his career, and he exceeded expectations. As a result of his parents' wealth and influence, he did very well. Tony was now a man, and due to his background, he hardly thought about marriage. He had zero thoughts about dating and getting married. He was into his work. This soon gave everyone around him, especially his parents, concern. They soon began advising him to get married. His company held a party to celebrate their achievements, and his colleagues persuaded him to lighten up and join them at a bar. It was while he was there that Mommy spotted her next big fish. She approached him while he was with his friends, and they happily excused themselves. Mom quickly knew that Tony was a newbie in places like that. He declined the glass of wine she offered him, and when he finally gave in to her request for a dance, Mom had to guide his steps on the dance floor. Soon after the party, Mom took him for an after-party, which led to her becoming pregnant. Dad was full of regret. What was he going to do? How would he tell his parents that he had gotten a girl pregnant outside wedlock? He was scared of aborting the child as he didn't want to put either mother or child in harm's way. His religion forbade abortions. He finally decided that it was best he just got married to her. He took her to his parents, and when they questioned her, she lied that her parents were dead and she had to fend for herself. The marriage took place before the pregnancy became obvious. After the childbirth, he learned he had made the worst mistake of his life. One which could ruin him. Mom resumed smoking immediately after I was born, and her thirst for alcohol couldn't be satisfied. She turned the home into a mess, and even though she would never lack since she was the wife of a millionaire, she was never really satisfied. She kept on going to parties, and while I was still months old. Dad couldn't understand why a mother would be this reckless. It was clear that she didn't know how to love. I guess that you can't give what you don't have. Dad finally decided to get a divorce from her when he caught her sleeping with one of his staff, and he discovered that her parents were still alive with 6 children. It was more than he could take. He cared less about the consequences. After her marriage to Dad, Mom traveled down to the community where her family was staying. Being a billionaire's wife, she went with her car and driver to spite her family. She needed to show her mother that she finally ended up very well. It was the talk of the town. She had changed her name from Rachel to Cindy. She spoke in an accent that was foreign to her community. She threw money in every direction except towards her family. The hatred was deep. Her family was not going to let her be. They traced her down to the city and made several claims about being her family, but she simply told her husband that they were just frustrated beggars who were out to take advantage of other people's success. Tony believed her. However, after so much pestering, Tony decided to give it some thought, and he paid an agent to investigate the issue. The findings were shocking. They were Mom's family. Dad traveled down to the community where they lived to see for himself. The people of the community gave him the history of his wife. Dad was shocked by the bones. Mom always had surprises for him, but now, he had had enough. He drove back to the city in anger, only to find one of his male staff sleeping with his wife. Now nothing would hold him back from getting a divorce. He told his parents, who were in full support of his actions, and the divorce proceedings commenced. Mom got a good fortune out of it, and she was awarded my custody. Something that Dad didn't want her to have. Dad was made to pay her a certain amount every month, which would include Carter for the needs of both mother and child, and he could see me twice every week. Mommy didn't seem to care. She had won either way. She would no longer have to dance around with poverty anymore, or so she thought. Within months, she had squandered the money gotten from the divorce, and we had to live on the monthly allowance. This allowance was never enough for Mom, and so she decided to play her game again and get another prey. This made us go from city to city. This made my claim to not have a father. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother finally forced me to have sex. The men who usually visited the homes where we stayed would often make passing glances at me. They complimented my beauty and would whisper something into Mummy's ears, after which she would nod her head and say that I wasn't ready. When I turned 14, Mom made me follow a young man home. I guess he was twice my age. He was the son of one of her older male friends, and I later learned that the man wanted his son to get intimate with the lady because he heard him say that he was attracted to men. So, when this friend of Mom paid her a considerable amount, she called me and asked me to follow the boy home, and we should both enjoy ourselves. We got home, and I was amazed at the beauty of the house. I had only seen such places in the movies. The servants quickly arranged dinner for the both of us, and we ate in his room. It was clear that everything was new to him as they were to me because I could tell that he was more nervous than I was. We played a bit, and he kissed me. We soon found ourselves trying to make the night a success story for our parents, and we eventually did. When I was driven home the next day, I was really embarrassed by Mom took the opportunity to give me some lecture on sexuality. I watched her glow with pride as she said that I had been initiated into womanhood and that it was a phase every girl must pass through. She said it was a privilege to have had my first encounter with the rich man's son. I didn't even know his name, and I was sure that he didn't know mine. This was how I got introduced to life, and it didn't take long before I became a pro in the area of dating. My mom and I soon formed a partnership. She would have me put the best schools where the kids of the wealthy usually went. I was to identify them and get close to them. Through them, I would then give her access to their father. Mom had no issues making these men fall for her. She was beautiful. Far beautiful than myself. This was how Mom sustained the luxurious life she had so come to know. It was when we moved over to a new city and I was enrolled in a new school that I met Pete. Pete was a charming guy, but he was not really my type. He was naive in every sense of the word. I played the pity game and got the empathy of the class. Pete was moved by my story. He never knew that I was moved by his father's wealth. He was an excellent combination of intelligence and wealth. I soon had Pete solving problems for me, academic and financial difficulties. I had learned to be manipulative, just like Mom, so I had no issues making Pete think I was genuinely interested in him. Mom would always warn me not to lose focus or get attached to any guy because we were not going to stay at a place for long, so I had never had a serious relationship with anyone. I don't even remember a time in my life when I had feelings for a guy. I was just taking them for a ride. Pete soon invited me over to his house. He had wanted me to meet his dad. When I arrived, the dad was still busy and Pete and I just sat at the lounge talking. When he finally came to join us, I was overwhelmed by his presence. He had such charisma and confidence that every lady would want her man to possess. When I saw him, I almost doubted the fact that Pete was his son because he was way handsome. His light baritone voice carried with it such authority that made his servants loyal. When he came, Pete immediately introduced me to his father, Mr. Xavier. I was smitten. I watched his whole body as he talked. He was the complete package. He asked about me, and I talked about myself. I gave him the usual story that I had given everyone else about my dad being dead and my mother working hard to make ends meet. They all bought the story. Everything went perfectly that night. After dinner, Mr. Xavier asked that his driver drop me off. I wasn't pretty sure that I had impressed him that night because he seemed to pay little attention to me. However, I looked forward to coming over again, not seeing Pete, but seeing his dad. Mr. Xavier. However, although I was intrigued by him, I knew that the story concerning his escapades with ladies could be true because he never seemed interested in my mom when I spoke about her. Mr. Xavier was an oil magnate. He never remarried after the death of his first wife, who died during childbirth. He wasn't ready to settle down with any lady because he knew that they only came around because of his wealth. Losing the woman whom he had struggled with was really painful for him. His wife was everything to him. His success story would never have been written if not for her sacrifices. She was his motivation. She saw things in him which nobody ever saw. When he was starting up, things were not very smooth, but she stuck with him and she gave him every support which he needed. He was really a mess, but she fixed him up. He was scared that she could leave him at any point in time because she had the opportunity to ditch him for more affluent guys, but she always reassured him of her undying commitment towards him. It was clear to Mr. Xavier that his lover was an angel sent to him from up above. He owed her his life. His life was now worth a lot simply because of the investment she made in him. He proposed to her as soon as he could afford a ring, and although she had no reason to say yes, she did. She was willing to risk her life for him. After they were wedded, she further intensified her efforts towards the growth of his company, and 5 years into the marriage, he was already a billionaire. That was when she became pregnant for Pete. Mr. Xavier was so happy when he got the news of her pregnancy. They were finally going to get an addition to their family. He made plans for them. He put things in place for the delivery. He actually got his wife a surprise house and a private jet just to say thank you. It was, however, a sad day for him when he was told that she didn't make it. He felt terrible. It was as though his world had just crumbled. He experienced a kind of pain that he had never known in all his life. He felt empty inside. His wife had just left a space that would be impossible to fill up by anyone else, and although he found consolation in the child which she left behind, he made a vow not to remarry. He knew that he would have a hard time finding a lady who wouldn't love him because of his money. A few months to his wife's demise, he began visiting clubhouses, and that was where he slept with a lady who claimed to be pregnant for him. He wasn't going to make the mistake of getting married to this harlot. That was a mistake a friend of his had made years back. He, however, took care of the lady who claimed to be carrying 2 children on the inside of her. He made sure she was comfortable and lacked nothing. He was willing to accept responsibility and take care of them all, but it was soon discovered that the lady had been lying all along. The pregnancy test was positive, and she did have twins, but they were not his. Although he didn't send her to jail for extortion, he quickly took back the car and house that he had given her. This further strengthened his resolve to be on the lookout for women. A week after I had met Pete's dad, I fell ill and missed school. This was our plan to get Pete to come to visit, and he did. When he arrived home, Mom quickly made him feel comfortable. She was good at that. Pete immediately fell in love with her personality. She was giving the love of a mother which he had never known or experienced. All through his stay, I was eagerly waiting to hear him say that his dad sent regards to me, but he didn't. While looking at him talk or laugh, I could only think about his dad. What was happening to me? Why was I falling for his dad? This was the first time in my life that I would really be interested in someone, and it just had to be my boyfriend's dad. Pete gets home feeling overwhelmed by the love shown by my mom. It told his dad all about her. She lit up a spark in him that his father had never seen since he was born. It wasn't surprising when Mr. Xavier invited Mom and me for dinner at his place. We knew that our plan was making progress. The day finally arrived when we were going to meet with Pete and his dad. I was eagerly looking forward to it because I wanted to see Mr. Xavier again. Mr. Xavier sent his driver to come and pick us up at about 7 p.m. We arrived at their home, and everything was well placed. We were led to the sitting while we patiently waited for our host to show up. I watched Mom feast her eyes on the eloquence of everything. Not even her billionaire ex-husband had such taste. I could read her thoughts from the look on her face. This was a big fish that would take a lifetime to consume. I knew that she was already playing a scene in her head where she would wake up in that house and boss the servants around. Before long, one of our hosts arrived. Pete. He was smiling and happy to have us around. I was sure he would have a nervous breakdown if he knew that he was expected but not wanted. I watched Mom put up a fake smile. It always baffled me how Mom could play different characters at once. How could she be good one time and bad the next? Mom was a wonder. While we were all seated and getting comfortable, I had the familiar voice that I was longing to hear. It was Mr. Xavier. His perfume filled the air. Our attention was immediately shifted from son to father. We all stood up to greet him, and he seemed impressed. He invited us to the dining table for dinner. Mom and I were blown away by the kind of service his staff rendered. Mom avoided every topic that would lead to her ex-husband, which we claimed was dead. She acted hurt by the painful memories of the past when Mr. Xavier asked about her husband. I don't know how she did it, but tears just flowed out. I almost believed that they were real. This woman never ceased to amaze me. Mr. Xavier felt bad that he had asked her about the past she was trying hard not to remember. He personally understood what it meant to lose someone you loved. He had had the same bitter experience. He apologized to Mom for making her uncomfortable, and Mom simply played the victim. We never wanted the night to come to an end, but it did. I was not particularly glad that Mr. Xavier and Mom spent most of the time together. That night was the beginning of another adventure for us. Mr. Xavier frequently began inviting us over to his place at weekends. He would sometimes persuade us to spend the night at his house. Mom had warned me not to get intimate so quickly with Pete so that I didn't appear like the cheap girl that I already am. She equally didn't give Mr. Xavier easy access. This made him all the more interested in her. She didn't seem like other women. She rejected his cash gifts and even turned down his offer to buy her a car. She didn't seem interested in his money at all. She always wanted things put in order, and I was amazed at her meaningful contributions to discussions centered on the oil and gas sector. I repeatedly asked myself how a lady who had never seen the four walls of a classroom had such knowledge. Her charm was finally catching up on Mr. Xavier, who saw more of his wife in her. The closer the holidays came, the closer Mom and Mr. Xavier became. I had no other option than to stick with Pete. I guess a bird at hand is worth more than 1,000 in the bush. When the holidays arrived, Mr. Xavier suggested that we go for a vacation somewhere in the Maldives. The Maldives is a living wonder. It was a sight to behold. We saw things we never knew existed. We visited places, went fishing, and partied. This was the kind of life that Mom desired, and we were living it. Everything was just perfect, even though I still wished Mom and I could trade places. I wished that she could settle with Pete while I would be left with his dad. It wasn't their first time coming there, though. Almost all the staff was well acquainted with Mr. Xavier and Pete. They looked at us as though there were others who had been in our position. Well, it didn't matter to either of us because we were occupying the position now, and we were not going to leave anytime soon. It was on our second day there, while Pete and I were taking a walk, that I discovered how deep he had fallen for me and how deep his dad had fallen for my mom. I listened with a grin on my face as he told me that he had never felt this way in his entire life. He confessed to me that this was the first time he was feeling complete. He said that this was the first time he actually knew the joy that came from a whole family. He then told me about his birthday that would be coming up in 2 weeks. It was going to be celebrated at home with most of his father's colleagues and friends present for the occasion. He said that all he desired for a birthday present was to move in with them permanently. I was glad that we had gotten this family, but I somehow felt bad because I knew that this chapter would soon come to go close, and they would be negatively affected once we left because they sincerely loved us. I then told him not to make decisions or wishes like that because his dad may not be in support of it. Although I knew that his dad wanted a relationship with my mom, I told Pete that his dad may just want to have both families as friends and nothing more. At that point, he told me what I never saw coming. Pete said that he has never been this way with any woman before. His dad always came alive when my mother was around. Pete said that he overheard Dad telling his friends that he had found a span just like his ex-wife and he was going to propose to her during my birthday celebration. This was it. We were almost there. I couldn't wait to tell Mom even though Pete told me not to. This was good news. When we got back home, I broke the news to Mom, and she was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a billionaire's wife once again. Life had finally given her a second chance, and she wasn't going to take it for granted. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her family members, ruin this golden opportunity. She would never go back to her community to show off. Mr. Xavier told Mom about the birthday party and asked that we both be present. He had a popular designer design a dress for her, which was worth $10,000. Mom and I showed up that day. We actually came earlier than most guests. Mom pretended as though she never knew what was set to happen. She was an actress indeed. While my mom was going through the guest list, her reaction suddenly changed. She immediately had us sneak out of place. We picked a cab and drove home as fast as we could. Once we got home, she asked me to pack up my bags quickly because we were relocating. I was surprised. Why should we migrate to another city now that everything was beginning to fall in place? As we boarded a train, she told me that the third name on the list of guests was Mr. Tony. My father. I knew that this meant that I would never see or hear from my boyfriend, whose dad I fell in love with. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me?
My mom forgets things. Hi guys. My name is Jane. I am the first child of my parents, who had 2 more girls. I was loved the same way my sisters were loved. And you won't even know that the man I called my dad is not my biological father. Yes, he isn't. I am more beautiful than my sisters, and that people usually had a hard time believing that we were siblings. Only those who knew my history would agree. My mom and dad were two young couples who were deeply in love and preparing for marriage. They just couldn't keep their hands off each other. You could not find one without the other. Everyone who knew my father would always tease him because it seemed like my mom had him wrapped around her fingers. I was told that my dad never saw any day as a great day until he spoke with my mom over the phone. He began his day with her, and he ended it with her. My mom was not different at all. It was clear she had given her heart to someone. Suitors who were always coming for her hand in marriage could now see that it was a lost cause because my mother would not give up the man she had ever truly loved for another guy. Everything seemed perfect. Although some elderly folks said that the feelings would not always be there. Everyone admired their love. Some claimed that it would die within the first few years after marriage, and it was only a matter of time before the flame that they felt burning all over them would be put out. My parents cared less about what people had to say concerning them. They were in love, and that was all that mattered. They were convinced that they were meant for each other. They could not wait to get officially recognized as man and wife. My dad knew that although Mom loved him, he would only be relaxed when they were married formally because then he could hold her as a trophy in front of every other man in town who was equally interested in my mom. He wanted them to see she was all his. My mom equally knew that getting married to my father meant that she had a right to tell other ladies to stay away from her territory. And so when Dad proposed to her, she readily accepted. If there was someone Dad wanted far away from Mom, it was Julius. Mom was from an average family, the only child of parents who were high school teachers and understood the value of education. They tried instilling moral values into a mom from an early stage. Having a beautiful daughter meant that everyone would want to take advantage of her. This was common. Boys would go after girls just to sleep with them, and when they did, the story got around very quickly. Some girls usually get pregnant, so it was considered a normal situation if you found a girl of 14 years old pregnant with a child. The community was bad, but my mom's parents had no option of relocating since the school where they taught was right in the community. And they were not rich, so they had to do all in their power to raise my mom. They knew trouble lurked around every corner in the streets, especially when you had someone like Julius around. Julius was an irresponsible boy. He was irresponsible in every sense of the word. He came from a family who was known to be the perpetrators of most of the crimes in the community. Julius had irresponsible parents, but he soon overtook them in the race towards being wayward. He detested school. He had no brain for books. It was a sigh of relief when he was finally made to stop school because he had been a thorn in the flesh of the teachers and the school authorities. He fought with everyone, friends, foes, students, and teachers. On one occasion, he had threatened the principal of the school. My mom's parents were his teachers at once, and they did not need anyone to tell them about Julius. They just ignored him like he never existed, and it was to their advantage because they had watched him beat up a making teacher twice his size who wanted to punish him for coming late to class. When his parents were summoned for the 5th time by the school authorities concerning their son's attitude, they started a fight with the teachers there. And Julius joined them in the fight. The school authorities reported the issue to the police department, and that was when Julius was finally kicked out of the school. Julius then made a gang out of the boys living on the street who didn't attend school. He then grew worse. Out of the suitors who came for Mom, Julius was one who she had a hard time turning off. Julius just made it plain that he only wanted to sleep with her. And even though he had gotten about 3 girls pregnant, he didn't seem to care. He only wanted to sleep with Mom so that he could brag about his latest achievements all around the community. He wanted to be the first person who slept with Mom. He kept on making advances towards Mom, which she constantly rejected. When it was noised that Mom was engaged, Julius became furious. He was going to miss all he had been trying hard to get, and worse still was the fact that he was losing it to that. Julius had known Dad since childhood. Daddy was the direct opposite of all that Julius stood for. My grandparents taught them in the same class, and my grandparents loved my dad. They constantly used him as a point of reference to other kids. While growing up, Julius could mess with other kids and get away with it, but he couldn't try such a thing with Dad. On various occasions, Dad had given him a series of beatings, a memory he carried all through his life. And now once again, Dad was about inflicting pain on him by depriving him of his target. I once heard the story of how my father dealt with Julius while they were in their teens. My father has always hated injustice. He was often found defending the weak and defenseless. Julius was fond of bullying everyone, and no one had ever stood up to him until my dad moved into the community. He attended the same school and was in the same class. My dad is quiet, but that shouldn't fool you. He had a lion in him. On his very first day in school, he saw Julius take the lunch of a poor girl. Since it was his first day in school, and he had no friends yet, he kept looking and trying to see the outcome of the whole situation. After Julius made away with the girl's food, she began crying, but when the teacher came and asked her what happened, she refused to tell him. And that was because she had been warned by Julius not to. Otherwise, she would face more severe pain. Everyone was afraid of Julius. On that day, before school was over, Julius walked up to Dad and told him to always respect him just like everyone else did. My father kept silent. The next day, Julius walked up to my dad and demanded that the content of my dad's lunchbox be given to him. Dad kept silent and continued eating his food. Everyone watched as they feared that Dad was soon going to be beaten up. Julius was furious when my dad continued to eat without even saying a word, so he threw away my dad's food on the floor. My father charged at him just like a mad bull. In a split second, Julius eased on the floor, and my father was on him, feeding him blows. Everyone started hailing my father. It took a while before the teachers intervened finally came around, but it was already too late. Julius had already lost some teeth but retained 2 swollen eyes. They were taken to the principal's office to narrate their account of the story, and that was when everyone in the class spoke up about how notorious Julius had been. Julius was immediately punished and suspended for 2 weeks. And as soon as my father got back into the class, everyone came around him. When Julius returned from suspension, he avoided my dad, and if he wanted to bully someone who knew my dad, he immediately left the fellow. That was how the rivalry and enmity between Julius and my father began. On one occasion, when Dad and Mom were coming from my grandparents' place, they met Julius and his gang. By the way, it was then that Julius got humiliated the most. Dad made it clear to him that he had lost the battle and would never in his life get an opportunity of sleeping with his soon-to-be wife. Mom raised her finger, which showed her engagement ring, and she and Dad turned and walked away laughing. Julius was furious. He was not going to let this one go by just like that. He made a plan, one that would ensure he repaid both Mom and Dad. Their wedding date was fixed, and everything was moving smoothly. However, 2 weeks before their wedding, Mom was raped by a group of armed robbers who invaded her parents' home. Julius arranged a gang to go and rob my mom and her parents. They went with guns and knives and immediately broke down the entrance door. They collected the few cash they could find, and while the gang members were about to leave, Julius said he came to collect something more than cash. He wanted to have a taste of Mom. His gang members tried changing his mind about raping Mom, but he refused, and they couldn't compel him as he was their leader. After he had his way with her, he laughed and said that the pig could have the leftover. That statement gave him away. This tragedy was too much to bear. My mom's parents wanted my mom to conceal the information from her lover so that the wedding would not be called off. But my mom, who was already traumatized by the experience, was not ready to build a home on the foundation of deception, and however, the news will eventually spread. And so she made up her mind to tell my dad about it. And she did. It was not an easy pill for my father to swallow, but he did. He was ready to get married to my mom. He covered up her shame by not informing his parents about what had happened. He assured my mother that his love was stronger than ever, and together, they would pass through this phase successfully. This made my mother's parents love my dad more. My mother found it difficult to become intimate with my dad during the wedding night. Her wound was more profound than they all thought. My dad was very understanding. He did not want to force himself on her. He was willing to help her get through this phase of her life, so they agreed that she would go for counseling. They would both see a therapist. A bigger blow soon struck when it was discovered just a week into the marriage that my mother was pregnant as a result of the assault. They were both distraught. My mother cried her eyes out. This was too painful. She began thinking about aborting the child, but my dad intervened. He was equally hurt, but he did not let it affect his sense of reasoning. He was still going to protect my mom from the world. He made a vow, and he was going to keep it. He promised my mother that he would love the child as though it were his very own, and that is what he has consistently done. It was very easy to detect who was responsible. An arrest warrant was made for Julius, but he fled the scene for a while. Some of his gang members were rounded up, while the rest went with him. He began living the life of a fugitive, going from one town or community to the other. But in each place where he went, He found it difficult laying low as he often went on a robbery spree just to survive. Before long, he became wanted in several states of the country, and a huge amount of cash reward awaited anyone who would bring the information that would lead to his arrest. It was not long before the law caught up with him. During his trial in court, Julius admitted to the crimes levied against him, and he was sentenced to life in prison. However, while he was being led away, some group of armed individuals attacked the court and killed the judge and 6 officers. Julius escaped and disappeared from off the scene. 3 months after I was born, my grandparents started getting death threats from an anonymous fellow who claimed they would pay for almost taking his life away. It was clear who this individual was. It was Julius. My grandparents were witnesses during his trial, and so when he escaped, he vowed to make them pay. He made several attempts to kidnap me when I was a few months old just to cause my parents pain. My parents then decided that it would be best if my grandparents relocated to a different city. That's why they would be safe from danger. However, today when do you suppose to travel? Julius and his parents attacked them on the way with guns and ammunition, but they were soon disappointed as a heavy military presence was stationed around specific areas where it was suspected that they would attack. They were a massive shootout, and Julius' parents were killed alongside the gang members. Julius was the only survivor, who once again escaped, but this time around, he was coming for my parents. He knew that he had lost everything, and he was willing to kill every one of us and then commit suicide. His luck equally ran out as police officers were stationed at our home. He opened fire when he arrived but was easily subdued. He was taken into custody. On the final day of his trial, law enforcement agents who were heavily armed were placed everywhere just to make sure there was no way Julius could escape. Investigations showed that it was Julius's patents that masterminded his previous escape. Julius was sentenced to death by hanging this time around. While 2 policemen were led away, one of them got so careless and exposed his weapon, and Julius went for it. He made to shoot my parents before he was eventually shot by an officer. It was a day of relief for individuals, families, communities, states, and the country at large. People could now sleep with both eyes closed. Although my dad was determined to cover up my mother's shame, news of the incident got out, and she was so traumatized to the point that she found it challenging to keep up with things. She easily forgot things. She was always lost in thought. She forgot things almost as soon as she said them. She seemed to always drift apart. This was something I witnessed while growing up. She would often get lost in her thoughts while cooking, that it was not abnormal to see her burn her food at least 3 times a week. There was a time when she drove down to the mall to pick up some items, but she boarded a cab back home. When Dad asked her if the car had broken down, she remembered she had driven herself to the mall. This was a regular occurrence. She would request something and reject it as soon as it came. It was no use getting into an argument with her because she was always right. My dad was patient all through the years. He had helped turn Mom's mess into a powerful message, and they both found themselves counseling young couples who were going through a marital crisis. They often organized classes for these couples at home where they would encourage the couples by telling their own story. This class was tagged Sex, Love, and Goop and aired on Netflix. They were a source of encouragement to these young couples who soon started testifying about how the story of my parents helped them. We, the kids, were never allowed to come close to the area where this meeting was held. But I always found a way to eavesdrop. One couple, in particular, caught my attention. I listened to the lady as she and her husband shared their story. With tears of gratitude to my parents, the lady introduced herself as Miranda, and everyone listened as she talked. I remember that she said to everyone, "Good day. My name is Miranda." As hard as I tried, I never was the little girl that had dreams about her wedding. I just wanted the major stakeholders to be happy for the most part. Let everyone enjoy themselves and have money after the wedding. Therefore, when the situation arose that warranted a privately intimate wedding, it wasn't much of a bother to adjust because the picture of happiness I had did not warrant anything happening. However, as much as I never thought of any preconceived ideas of what my wedding would look like, I knew what it wasn't going to look like. And for the life of me, it was not that my husband and I would have a major issue with consummating our marriage for months. The issue is called vaginismus, and no, I'm not ashamed of it. So please don't help me to be ashamed of what I'm not ashamed of. Vaginismus is more of a mental condition than it is a physical one. So, imagine my surprise when the honeymoon I had pictured was laden with pain, tears, and fatigue. Oh, I cried so hard, because we had fought to get to where we were. People were congratulating us, and we were grateful. But what was this? The pain, excruciating, raised to a power of 1,000. I was in pain, intense, serious, and body-shaking pain. My husband hurt from watching me writhe in pain. What was a lubricant? What didn't we try? A few weeks after, nothing had happened, and I was very tired of hearing "just close your eyes. You're imagining the pain. It's not that hard." I went to a gynecologist at a hospital. On the 26th of January, exactly 1 month after our wedding, I decided to seek medical help. I drove myself to the hospital outside the city. This was my first ever gynecologist visit. I explained to a general physician first, and then I was referred to the CMD of the hospital. I remember walking in head down in shame as if I brought it upon myself. That part does not work again, though. I sat in front of this thick man with no name card or plaque in sight, not on his door, table, or overall. I should have walked away. But I did not, because I did not even know what to expect. I explained everything to him in between tears. I felt I could not do anything, no matter how much my husband encouraged me. "How long did you people date for?" he asked, almost eyeing me. 2 years and 8 months, I answered. "So, you people dated for close to 3 years, and you didn't have sex?" Now he was irritated. "No, we didn't." I was smiling, trying to change the topic. "So the rest of us are sinners. Look at it now, 3 years. No sex." His words felt like a dagger in my heart because, at the time, I was already asking God why He asked that we remain sexually pure if the process of deflowering was this painful. This man asked me almost 5 times if I was sure I was a virgin. I answered that I was, except for the sexual abuse that happened when I was a child, which would have sponsored that reality. He went ahead to minimize everything I said, and then asked me to lay on the examination table. After checking the first time, the guy said there's a seal that can easily be removed with his fingers. Brethren, those were the worst 3 minutes of my life. I fell from the table as I ran from this pain. The pain was about to numb my ears and my feet. I screamed, but it came out as muffled groans because tears poured too much. The matron he had sent for had to shout at him to stop. I couldn't drive home after that incident. I had to call my husband to come to get me. Tears didn't stop for almost an hour. I kept crying and crying. At that point, I vowed to encourage premarital sex. As we drove home from that silly doctor, I was very quiet. The tears did not stop. At this time, I wasn't trying to cry. My body just was exhaling. My body knew it had been violated. My husband would have gone to bring the place down, but the issue at hand was more serious to me than getting the idiot to pay. He had told us to try that night, but we could not. We could not even try that week. I bled for about 2 days too. At this point, I was sure that I was going to be an ambassador for premarital sex. God had deceived me. I was going to get him back. Then I called my auntie. She's a top consultant in the country, and long story short, we were in Illinois. University College Hospital. The next week, the professor we saw, oh, what an amazing man. He cried with me, consoled me, and encouraged me when it was time to examine me when I hesitated a couple of times. I started crying on the examination table without anyone touching me. After examination, he prescribed lidocaine and said we should try, but the surgery would be carried out if nothing happened. Thursday that week, I was in UCH for surgery. I was completely put under. I didn't even know when I slept off. They called it digital dilation. My husband was a rock, complete support. My mum could hardly sleep or breathe. Oh, I don't want to go into my mum's reaction. It's too much. The woman was broken. Anyway, after spending the little we spent, and the time, my body was knocked out for 2 weeks after that surgery. I was dizzy for 2 weeks nonstop. The surgery did not work. At this point, I lay on the bed and asked God what I had done to deserve this pain. If it was just difficult, it would have been different. The pain was completely beyond me. It would reverberate underneath my feet, almost numb my ears. It wasn't acute pain or a bearable pain. The professor had told us that if the surgery did not work, we were to return for a procedure where I'd be numbed waist down, and then we'd try given professionals. Chris swore that it would never be him or his wife, so that was a no-go area. When we returned to our base, we both decided to leave it. We were tired. As in, I was exhausted, and we were barely 2 months into the marriage. What was worse, I hadn't even asked God anything. We did everything we had done until that point with our logical calculation. I didn't even consider God. I didn't ask if it was His will. I became desperate and ran to help God. I didn't realize what I'd done until He and I had a conversation, and He chided me gently. I cried. Auntie D and the professor kept calling to find out our progress, and I had to gently tell her to leave it be. My mental health had taken such a hit that I could not even have anyone constantly checking on us. My husband and I decided to enjoy each other. Ladies and gentlemen, penetrative sex is not the only sex in the world. It's not. So, rest very well. I never have and will never support masturbation, but your husband can familiarize himself with you. Hiding can't work. Open up and let the exploration begin. We needed to unlearn the expectation that penetrative sex was the ultimate goal. It is not. Sexual satisfaction is. Find what works for you and do it well. Then came a program called Sex, Love and Goop on Netflix. That was the first time that we encountered this class. We did not agree on many things within that documentary, but our breakthrough came through a procedure on the show. Calculated breathing. I realized that what my body was doing was natural. It prevented me from an antibody, and the reflex action was to close up. When I consciously take calculated breaths before we begin, I allow my body to relax. I also started to have conversations with my mind. This is good for me. This is good for us. He is one of us now. In, out, in again, out again. Slight pain, in, out, deeper, in, out. Like that, we won. Whoosh. God, the first time, it still hurt, but it was bearable. The second time, the pain was more sustainable. And like that, Jesus got the victory. This class has been beneficial to my husband and me. It helped put an end to our misery. By the time Miranda was done with her story, people were emotionally moved. They all applauded Miranda's husband, who stood solidly by her and refused to cheat on his wife. However, my parents knew that specific individuals may question the authenticity of Miranda's experience. And so my mom spoke up. She started by noting that it was not fiction. Medical records back up Miranda's and her husband's claim. My parents made the other couples there understand that there's always a reason behind every problem in marriages. Nothing just happens. They said that there's a reason or cause why people are sex addicts. And there is a reason behind the scene when you see that a lady suffers from vaginismus. They equally paid that when you are married but never satisfied with your partner no matter how she dedicates time for your we time. There's a reason for it. I was listening with rapt attention as they said that when a man, woman does not fancy or believe, have an interest in sex, there's a reason for it. Finally, Dad rounded up this session by saying that a lot of people have passed through one trauma or another in their early lives, that the results are one of the things we see manifesting in marriages nowadays. But it depends on what you do with those things before we say I do or even after you get into the institution called marriage. He said that he and his mom will always advocate for therapy, counseling while dating because of those negative things one might have encountered while growing. From childhood abuse, trauma, and all those to just basically having a different background while growing up. If one is not intentional about who to marry by taking therapy, counseling seriously, it will be a struggle. He quipped that while there are lots of lessons that could be drawn from the story of this couple, he would always recommend that people do their homework before taking this journey of life called marriage. This would go a long way to tackling most issues that could arise. I listened with pride. I was proud of the man that I grew up to know as my father. Although he treated me like a daughter and never for once made me feel inferior to his other children, there have been times when I wished that I had his blood flowing through my veins. I felt ashamed knowing that I had the DNA of a man who would go down in the history of the nation as one of the most terrible men who ever lived. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to change my history. I usually found myself thinking about how my life would have been, how I would have turned out to be if Julius succeeded in stealing me as a child when he wanted to. Would I be this refined young lady that I am today? Or would I equally end up as a criminal who was wanted in various parts of the country? Anyways, I was glad that things just turned out the way they did. The door suddenly opened, and here was Mom looking at me. I was eavesdropping all along, and I knew I was going to get punished. However, I used her situation to my advantage. I told her that I heard her call for me. She wasn't sure if she did, so she let me go. She probably thought that she did but forgot she did. Hey guys. What would you do if you were me and you had a mom who forgets stuff every 5 minutes after she says them? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I am 17 and I hate people asking me if I am a virgin. Hi, I am Phil. I am just 17 and I had been staying with my cousin Luke for some weeks now. Before now, I had never met Luke in person. I have only had a couple of virtual chats with me. Before now, to be frank, I was only called upon to say hi on those encounters. Before now, he and my mum are so close, those two are something. Before now, I once thought, there is something fetish going on between those two. Before now, I haven't written that off yet. Before now, I don't trust my mum with men, and I am still yet to catch her with one. It is wrong of me to say my mum is cheating. On who exactly? She is a single mother. She has every reason to be dug by different kinds of men. Before now, she won't be breaking anyone's heart if she does that, but I am yet to see a man knock at the door except the mailman. Before now, it can't be him, he looked gay, and he is gay. On his visits, he looked at me instead of my mum. Before now, that man is something else. The mailman is a tall dark guy. Before now, he once told me he is a Belgian but came from a strong background of Congolese. Before now, my mum has black men's frames in her room but I doubt she was ever interested in one. Not even Mr. Christoph, our neighbor, and the only black man with the German accent I have ever seen in my whole life. His daughter, Anna, is not black. Before now, initially, I thought Mr. Christoph adopted Anna, but she is his actual daughter. Anna and I are quite close, but nothing intimate was going on between us. I am not comfortable with girls. I haven't approached one my whole life. Before now, everyone in our neighborhood knew I am a virgin. I guess that was why my mum asked Luke to come and pick me. We talked about this, but for the first time in like forever. My mum wanted her to wish to come to pass. I can recall Anna telling me that her grandfather met a South African lady on his expenditure to Africa. The end product of what happened between the two is her father. Before now, Mr. Christoph is a single parent just like my mum, but he had never knocked at us. Not for once. Before now, he is a busy person, which gave Anna the privilege to invite several classmates to her place. Especially the male gender. Her room is opposite mine, and I do watch on her from my window. Before now, I got a binocular for this purpose just to gaze and fantasize about her figure. To be candid, I love watching her make love with the other guys that came visiting. Before now, according to my research, the standard time for sexual intercourse is 15 minutes, but this girl came last more than an hour. Before now, once a guy is done, she gets another in. Sometimes age rocks 2, 3 guys at the same time. I guessed she found out, but she had never mentioned it. Before now, she never asked me to come to see her in her room too. Before now, she once told me, "You're the most real guy in my life." That doesn't sound like I am interested in you. She preferred the friendship, but I can't say I do. Due to watching her, I started jerking off. Before now, I imagined her and stroked my penile muscle. Before now, my commonest commodity was now toilet rolls. On the stall one day, the salesgirl was looking at me with a weird face because all I came to buy were toilet rolls. "They're my mum's," I said. She scoffed. Over time, I realized watching Anna do her thing is toxic to me. So I ceased looking at her, but I couldn't control the huge again. My head kept looking for holes to dig. Before now, I had now become an addict. Who will set me free from this? Before now, I didn't tell my mum about it, but she surely knows. She might not know how I got sensitized into doing it, but she knew how I started. Before now, if you also think it was Anna's shape and curves that caused it, you're also wrong. I can't say this is what he does for a living, but Luke knows how to get a party started. Before now, since we had been living together, we had grown to understand ourselves over the weeks. Before now, Luke isn't all bad. He is a good person to be with, but not for me at this time. Before now, Luke has so many acquaintances but not a single friend. I wonder how he does that. Before now, he will always say, "Don't get too close to people. Once they're close, they will get the edge over you." It still doesn't make any sense to me to date. Living with Luke at the beachside is an idea. I can't tell if it is a good one or a bad one. Our relationship is kind of toxic to me, but Mum said that is what I need for now. Before now, all my life, I had lived with my mum until now. She had never seen anything wrong with me staying with her until when I finished high school. "You need to stay with a man to understand what men are built for before you finally go to college," she would say. Here I am, living my mum's dream for me. Before now, I kind of like the idea now. I am the newest guy in town in the city of no shame. Before now, it is normal to go in public and hit a lady's buttocks cheeks, or even go ahead to squeeze them, without anyone bringing up harassment as a topic. Before now, the guys in this new environment don't have any other thing they do. All they look for is to hit their waist hard on some soft buttocks, and the ladies just want to ride the guys. Things seem balanced here. Everyone knows what the other person wants and they are ready to give it to each other. Before now, this is the only society where no one has any reason to rape. Before now, if a lady turns you down, another will give herself to you without you asking. Before, it was difficult for me to adjust to how things work here. Before now, all my life before now, a guy had to approach a lady and so some talking, and then she might give him what he wanted or not. That's normal. At least not all guys that talked to Anna ended up on her bed, but most did. That's for sure. But here, all you have to do is go straight to the point. If you are that good, you can get up to 5 ladies before the end of the day. Being a virgin is not a virtue here, to live in this community. You need to get laid. Before now, when I entered I was the only virgin I know of. Before now, not even Gina, the bartender's daughter. She's just 15 and she's pro in her league. If she hadn't handled me, I would not have believed myself. She is good with her mouth and her throat is so stretchable. Before now, she even swallows the whole thing and thank you for it. What a polite girl. After just a week of staying at the beachside with Luke, I had already forgotten about Anna. Don't blame me, you would have done the same too. Before now, I have so many girls to fantasize with. Before now, I am always hard all day, even while I sleep. I can't get my head off what I am seeing everywhere. Before now, nothing is hidden here, you can just look out from the window and start releasing. Before now, I don't have to stroke myself anymore. Here the imagination is real. While I was still with my mum, watching Anna wasn't enough for me anymore. Before now, I started visiting the web to watch videos. Before now, this made me jerk off so many times a day. Before now, my mum noticed but saw it as the norm and Bever made a fuss out of it. Before now, she didn't discourage the habit, neither did she encourage it. Before now, that had become my new hobby. She would enter my room, find me at the moment. And yet, excuse me, before now, I became so popular on one of those sites that they started sending videos to my emails. Instead of this to cure my urge, it increased it. I don't know the reason for that. It was me all the way. Before now, I love the opposite sex more than I love myself. I could recall vividly that as a small child I watched romantic movies with Mum and she always allowed me to cuddle her. Before now, she didn't see anything wrong with me watching those movies with her. I got fond of those types of movies, which I made sure are the only kind of movies we have at home. While my mates at school got intrigued by action, thriller, fictional and animated movies, all that got my attention was romantic movies. Before now, while still a small boy, I had started looking at the girls in such a tempting way. Before now, I see beyond their clothes while just looking at them. Maybe that's the reason I didn't do well in my academics. Before now, that was what led me to peep at Anna. The girl is innocent of my crimes, I am the culprit of my predicaments. At Luke's place, there is no television or internet. Before now, I cannot remember the last time I used Facebook. All he does is the club from the sunrise to the sunset. Before now, I didn't know Luke so much before now. My mum spoke highly of him on things that doesn't matter. Before now, sometimes I thought my mum had been having intimate affairs with his nephew. Before now, but this is not feasible either. Luke lives thousands of miles away and Mum never lives home. She is an artist and she had transformed the garage into her workshop. She only goes to the stores to buy groceries. Before now, the other place she visits that often is the art stores to buy her pieces of equipment. To be frank, she's good at what she does and her imagination is wild. Do you remember the frames of the black men painting in her room? Those were his drawing. People love her paintings and she had attracted so many customers for herself. Before now, she is talented, she deserves the credit. Before now, when I was younger I had also had an interest in artistry. Before now, I started drawing with crayons and color sticks. Before now, my mum will frame my little paintings. Funny enough, people bought them, not just young kids like me. But the elderly ones also find them attractive. Now, I am a good painter myself. Before now, I single-handedly made the designs of my high school since I had been in the 8th grade. Before now, I had participated in a few competitions myself and won some medals for myself. I have an online page where I use my creativity for money. Before now, my brain was doing things the right way before Anna stepped into the story. Before now, I am not proud of the day I met her. I left my goal and started chasing after fables. Is she to be blamed? Before now, no, it was all me and I hold myself responsible. I had learned graffiti by the way. Before now, it is more fun painting on the walls with some color sprays. My mum did not buy this idea, since I had changed the whole wall to something else. Most teenagers stop by at our walls to take a few shots. Before now, but this time, my mum was not so proud of me. She said I had a child's imagination. Before now, according to her, paintings don't just depict the painter's imagination. It also describes the painter's mind. Before now, I wonder what my mind looks like. My mum is fond of speaking mysteries. Before now, her idioms looked as if they would make sense but made no sense eventually. Before now, she laughs at me whenever I showed her weird faces. She would say as my mind developed, I would understand them. Before now, these days, when I recall her idioms, I smile, they now make sense. I asked Luke about his girlfriend. Before now, he has not shown me one. Before now, and he had shared the bed with nothing less than 15 ladies since I have been with him. Before now, some had come here more than once. He is terrible. I barely sleep at night and there is nothing to distract me. Before now, no TV and no internet. Since my arrival, All they do here is to party in the afternoon and club at night. Most people come here for holidays. In my few last weeks, I have seen several faces already. Before now, Luke once told me, you might not remember the face but don't forget these two things. 1. The backside. And 2. How you were rocked. Before now, I wonder what that means. Before now, the other few here work around. It is either they work at the beach as instructors or as safeguards, or they work in bars, grocery stores, salons, music stores, and other necessities stores. Before now, nothing much happens where outside the holidays. Luke has a great connection with one of the bar owners. Before now, he is not the manager nor the bartender but does all those things and gets paid for it. Before now, he is the symbol of attraction at the bar and almost everybody knows him. Before now, it was as if he has been here his whole life. Before now, I heard he graduated college a year ago. Is he not supposed to be working with a white collar? Before now, I am not a fan of Luke, but he is good with ladies, to be frank. When I got to his place, I made it clear that I was asked to come to live with him, so that I can find my path. He laughed scornfully as if I had spit on his face. He told me, you are here to learn how it works in college. How it works in college. He drew a calendar of 30 days with me and told me to summarize my day by drawing out symbols on the space provided. I slept throughout the first few days, then I saw Gina. Before now, she offered to suck me. Before now, I was amazed. What can this little girl do? Before now, she asked me to come to the restroom. I followed, and she gave me my wildest experience until that day. Before now, I had never been sucked before. Before now, but, as far as I can feel it, little Gina is not a novice in the game. Before now, she told me, she keeps numbers and her goal is to reach 1,000 before she graduates high school. Before now, I will soon reach my mark, she told me. Before now, I wonder what number I am on her list. After Gina, I had met several ladies. Before now, I had unbuckled my belt in bed than I had in the restroom. Before now, I am no more the little good boy that I used to be. Things had changed now. Before now, I was trying to regain my interest in art and paintings when Luke showed up, but instead, I have gone wild. I still paint today, even with a greater mind. Before now, but all I paint now are images of women who had gone naked in front of me. Everything has its own ups and downs, but now I could not tell if I am enjoying life or I am wasting my talent. Before now, I do not know right from wrong anymore. Before now, I just wanted to live this life and enjoy every bit of it. Before now, Luke is very good at persuading people to do things they don't plan to. I guess that was the reason he is so close with the bar owner. Before now, he studied psychology in college. He is a good student according to what his parent had told my mom over the phone. Before now, he is not using this knowledge right as far as I am concerned. He is so good at understanding and predicting people, which has won him so much luxury and fame. Before now, to be truthful here, he is not a good mentor. Before now, I had spent more than a month at his place and he has never mentioned anything about his career, nor has he said anything concerning mine. What is he doing with his bachelor's degree? Before now, he gets paid for doing things I would do for free and get laid all night. Little did I know that Luke had been conversing with my mum on phone telling him about my progress. Before now, my mum's plan for me is to live it wild before going to college. Why will she do that? She told me herself when she called, as she usually does. Before now, that fateful day, she asked me the most unexpected question. Who is Gina? Before now, I was stunned. Before now, who is Gina? I rebelled. Before now, don't be naughty, she rejoined. Before now, how did you know about Gina? Before now, I asked. Luke told me about Gina. Luke had told me about everything, she replied, and Gina seemed to be the interesting character in his stories. Before now, so Luke was not just giving me tips on how to reach for a girl's panties, he is also updating my mum about the progress I had made. Okay, I explained to her how Gina and I met and our journey so far. Before now, I made her realize that I was not proud of it. Before now, Gina is 2 years and a few weeks younger than me. Before now, I felt like I had taken advantage of her. That doesn't sound true. Before now, I promised my mum that I would not try that with a little girl anymore. Never. Before now, she laughed. It was so obvious that it was fake. Before now, she then said, to get the actual target, the vulnerable must be used. It was like she didn't get what was going on. Before now, I was not the hunter here. To be frank, I was the one been hunted. Before now, Gina with all her skills and experience could not be vulnerable. I am. Before now, I had been every lady's prey since I got here. People don't care if I enjoyed it or not anymore. They just wanted to satisfy their urge. Before now, no one knew. I didn't have so much experience myself. The only ones I had were Anna's and her dolls and the web. Before now, I haven't even dug a lady before. Before now, that was the reason my mum asked me to come to live with Luke. I don't know much, but I guess she is tired of picking my wet and sticky toilet rolls from the floor. Before now, she wanted me to stop fantasizing and start the real thing. Before now, I remember her asking me if I now know the difference. Before now, I told her that I still haven't found out yet. Getting laid, sucked, and licked is common here, and everyone except me to all I know had 3 out of 3. Before now, for me, getting sucked is okay. Within just a few weeks, I had squeezed more lemons than the actual ones and sucked on them that a newborn baby would have. Before now, I have a likeness for the big and saggy ones, and here sag ones are not something to be ashamed about. Before now, the saggier it is, the better the experience. Before now, I had gotten so many ladies disappointed for not reaching for their holes. Before now, but I am determined to keep my virginity. Before now, I am a Christian and I don't want to cross the line, that is if I haven't already. Anna had been calling me of recent, remembered. She said I was her favorite opposite sex. Before now, this had started recurring to me. Before now, was she asking to make up with me. Before now, she told me things that did not concern me a bit. She told me she would be going to Namibia to learn the ways of her ancestry route. Before now, yes, we aren't that close for me to know your plans. Before now, we had never talked about what she would love to become. All we talk about are assignments and school activities. I begin to wonder if she had an interest in me. Before now, maybe she purposely let me look at her from the window. Before now, she should have just said it in common words. Before now, I don't understand signs and idioms. My mum tried it with me and she failed. She spoke at length this time around even though we are miles away. Before now, she told me of how her mother died of breast cancer when she was just 5 years of age. Before now, she told me that her father is a German. I never knew he is a pharmacologist until now. Before now, she told me about her first sex with a grown-up man. Before now, she told me all her experiences. Before now, it was a pitiful experience. Before now, I don't know why she is this open, but I am not interested in getting laid if that is what she wants. Before now, the calls kept calling but I had never called her back, not once. Before now, don't judge me, I was being careful. Luke is a fan of inviting friends over after party. Before now, my first morning at his place, he hosted a party for me. Before now, he said the party was for me but I was not included at all. Before now, all the balloons and strips had my names on them, but I was not in the center of the party. Before now, no one noticed me. Before now, I was shocked at such a welcome party. I left the living room for my room after Luke introduced me and no one noticed my absence. Before now, I peeped through the door hole and I saw all sorts of styles going on. Before now, the music was loud but no one was dancing to the beat. Everyone was digging, squeezing, or hitting someone. Wow, such a party on my behalf. Afterward, Luke would just invite his friends for a few shots. Before now, they chat and I am permitted to join in their discussion. Before now, they talked about business, cars, places, famous individuals but mostly girls. I like this kind of chat. Before now, later, when they found out about my painting, art was included in the discussion. The interest was minute, but I appreciated it. Yesterday, Luke and his friends were at our place. Before now, we talked for a while before John asked if I am still a virgin. I was surprised by that question. Before now, it stunned me. I don't know the correct answer to give. Before now, was I even a virgin before coming here? Before now, what is the New Age definition of a virgin? I tried to wave off the topic and Luke helped me in succeeding with that. Before now, we talked about Luke's sex life instead. Before now, I said so much about himself. I guessed he was trying to drive them away from me as much as possible. Before now, I appreciated what he did for me. I thanked him later and he gave me a big hug. It is well, he said to me. But come to think of it, that wasn't the first time someone would ask me if I was a virgin. Before now, Gina was the first to ask me. I told her I can't say but I haven't gotten laid yet. Before now, she laughed and I allowed her to laugh all as she could. Before now, I didn't stop her. She told me my secret is safe with her. Before now, another lady whose name I can't recall. Before now, I don't even think she knew me too. Before now, she was not the courteous type, she just wanted to get to the business. Before now, after the foreplay and series of sucking and stroking, she wanted me to go all the way down. Before now, I refused. She asked me the same question but I refused to respond. Before now, she got irritated and left. I never saw her again. Before now, I had encountered more of these misfit questions throughout my stay with Luke. Before now, I didn't tell Luke about it, but the rumor reached him. Before now, here, no one cared about your name. Before now, so, they referred to me as Luke's cousin. Before now, I spoiled Luke's face which is bad for business but Luke was fine with it. Before now, am I still a virgin? Before now, I wish to know your thoughts on this.
Mathematics is a difficult subject. The majority of students don't like mathematics in school. My father's wish for me to be a good mathematician made him hire a mathematics teacher for me. The mathematics teacher my dad hired to teach me mathematics taught me other things asides from mathematics. Sit back, relax, and read what the mathematics teacher taught me. My dad grew up in the city of California. He attended a neighborhood primary school before moving to St. Patrick High School. My grandfather was a professor of mathematics at California State University then. His dream was for my father to succeed him and become a great mathematician like him. My dad was not good at mathematics in his primary school. When he started high school, things were still the same, although the teachers used to cut him some slack because he was good at other subjects. In his primary school, he was the best student in English. He carried that performance to high school. Nobody was better than him in mathematics in his class. His father was not happy with being the best in the English language. He wanted my dad to replicate the same performance he has in the English language to mathematics. A few weeks before my dad's first exam in St. Patrick High School, my dad prepared him very well for the mathematics exam. They solved all questions together. They even went outside what was taught in the class. My grandfather was doing all this because he wanted my dad to become a great mathematician like him. The exam came and my dad did his best. He was optimistic that he would have a good result in mathematics for the first time. When the result came out, my dad was left disappointed. He passed all subjects except mathematics. When he took the result home to his dad, he was also left disappointed. He blamed my dad for all the efforts he put into making him have a good result in mathematics. My grandfather started having a second thought. His thought initially was for my dad to study mathematics when he gets to college. He started thinking about whether to allow him to study what he wants. But deep down in him, he wanted my dad to be like him because my dad was his only child. My grandma and some of his colleagues at work have advised him on most occasions to allow my dad to study what he wants. But my grandfather was not confused. He wanted his only child to take over him and become a highly respected professor like him. When my dad brought the result home, he started thinking about what to do to improve my dad's mathematics. At first, he thought of changing my dad's school from St. Patrick to another school. He thinks if my dad meets another mathematics teacher, his situation might improve. Anytime such thought comes to his mind, he always reminded himself that St. Patrick might not be the issue because my dad has been a poor mathematician since he was in primary school. He decided to allow my dad to continue at St. Patrick High School for another session. This time, he had the determination to take my dad away from St. Patrick High School if his performance in mathematics does not improve. The school resumed after their holiday, and my dad resumed with them. My grandfather had already told my dad that he will take him away from St. Patrick High School to another school if he does not do well in mathematics. My dad didn't want to leave St. Patrick High School because he has a lot of friends there. Therefore, he determined within himself to do well in mathematics in the next exam. My dad put in more effort in his mathematics than he did in previous sessions. Once he has thought any topic in mathematics, he will take it to his friend Michael. Michael was a good mathematician. He used to teach my dad during the weekdays while my grandfather will teach my dad during weekends. A few weeks to the exam, my grandfather took time off his busy schedule and stayed at home to teach my dad. He made sure that he covered every topic that my dad was taught in school. The exam came and my father did his best like he used to. When the result came, my dad failed once again. He was very sad when he saw the result. He knew there was nothing that will stop his father from taking him away from St. Patrick High School. He started thinking about how he was going to miss his friends. When he took the result home, his dad checked it. When he noticed that he failed, he told my dad that he should prepare to enroll in another school for the next session. My father tried to talk to his father about a possibility of improvement if he allows him to continue at St. Patrick. My grandfather was not ready to listen to any explanation. A week before the resumption of school, my grandfather took my dad to St. Paul High School for enrollment. My grandfather told them that the reason why he brought my father to the school was that he wants an improvement in his mathematics. He told them that my dad was good in all other subjects except mathematics. He told them that he is a professor of mathematics at the Chicago State University, and he wants my dad to become a great mathematician like him. The head teacher at St. Paul High School assured my dad that he will see an improvement in the next exam. He said they have trained teachers who can handle my father and make him a better mathematician. The head teacher said they have handled several cases of such nature, and all the students came out good. He told my grandfather that my dad's case wouldn't be any different from the other cases that they have handled successfully. When my dad resumed finally, the head teacher took a special interest in him because of what my grandfather told him when he brought it. While everyone goes for a break, he will tell my dad to go and read in the library. After school closes, He would not allow my dad to go home. He will tell him to wait behind for another series of lectures. My dad won't go home until 6 p.m. My dad is always tired whenever he gets home because of the stress at school. The head teacher was not concerned. All he wanted was a good grade for my dad. A few weeks before the exam, my dad did what he usually does. He took time off his busy schedule to see how far my dad has gone in mathematics. They started from the first to the last topic. He made sure he taught him every possible question that he might encounter in the exam. The exam came and my dad did his best as usual. When the result came, his performance was average. It was better than what he used to have in St. Patrick. This time around, he was more confident to take his result home. He knew he didn't do too well, but his performance improved. When he took the result to my grandfather, he was still not satisfied despite the improvement. He said he wants a spectacular result, not an average result. He said there is no way an average student can become a lecturer, not to talk of rising to the level of a professor. He told my dad that mathematics is different from all other subjects. He said being an average student or lecturer is allowed in other courses except for mathematics. He said there are two things in mathematics. It is either you are good at it or you are not good at it. He said being average is not allowed. He told my dad to work harder or face the consequence of moving to another school. My grandfather was determined to go any length to make my dad a great mathematician. The holiday coincided with when my grandfather was off work. He used the holiday to prepare my dad for the topics for the next session. He made sure he taught him all the topics. So, when school resumed, my dad had prior knowledge of the topics in mathematics. On the first day of resumption, my grandfather followed my dad to the school to remind the head teacher of the reason why he brought my dad to the school. My grandfather appreciated the efforts of the head teacher, but he told them to do more. He said he was happy that for the first time, his son was able to do meaningfully well in mathematics. He said he doesn't want him to stop there. He said he wants the performance for the next session to be better than what he had. The head teacher told my grandfather that they will continue to do their best until my dad becomes a great mathematician. The new session started with the revision of the topics of the previous term. After the revision of the previous topics, they proceeded to the topics of the new session. Because of the prior knowledge that my dad had, he was able to answer questions in class. His improvement started to show in class. The head teacher continued his ritual of keeping my dad at school until 6 p.m. like he used to. 2 weeks into the new session, a new female student enrolled in St. Paul High School. On her first day in school, she was brought to the assembly ground and she was introduced to all the students. After the assembly, she was shown her class. Fortunately, she belonged to my dad's class. After the introduction at the assembly ground, she was asked to introduce herself again to the members of her class. The new student told the class that her name is Olivia. She said she is 16 years of age. She told the class that she is from a family of 4 children, and she is the last child. She told the class attended St. Isabella Primary School. After she graduated from St. Isabella, she moved to St. Sophia High School. She said she completed her junior school there, but she decided not to proceed with her senior school there for reasons that she doesn't want to say. Olivia said she is happy to meet her colleagues. She promised to be of good character. She promised to represent the school well in every aspect. It was a norm in St. Paul High School for old students to welcome a new student with a song. They all stood on their feet and sang for Olivia. After the song, the head teacher told the students to welcome Olivia and make her feel comfortable. The head teacher told Olivia to take her seat while he left the class. There was no available seat except the seat close to my dad. When Olivia sat close to my dad, she said hi to him. My dad responded. My dad told her to feel comfortable. He told her that she would enjoy her stay in the school. He told her that he joined the school last session, and he has been enjoying his stay in the school. Olivia and my dad's conversation flowed well. His colleagues in class were surprised by my dad. Since he joined the school, they never saw him having a long conversation with the opposite gender. His main friends are male. When the bell for closing time was rung, Olivia came to my dad. She told him that she wants him and her to be going home together. My dad told Olivia that he doesn't go home with other students. He told her that he doesn't leave school until 6 p.m. She asked him why he stays behind when other students are going home. My dad told Olivia that it's a long story, but he will tell her if she is ready to listen. My dad started his story by telling Olivia about his father. He told her that his father is a professor of mathematics at Chicago State University. He said since his days in primary school, he had always had poor results. He told that St. Paul was not the school he started his high school education. He said he started his high school education in St. Patrick High School. He said his father had to withdraw him from there because his performance in mathematics did not improve. He said since he joined St. Paul High School, his performance has improved a little bit. That is why he is still a student of the school. He said one of the things that have been aiding his improvement in mathematics is the extra class he used to have with the head teacher. Olivia was stunned by the story she heard. She told my dad that she is good at mathematics too. She said she doesn't mind to be teaching him mathematics if he agrees. My dad said he can do anything to become a great mathematician. My dad said he will come to her house during the weekend because he doesn't have time during the weekdays. Olivia agreed to teach my dad mathematics at her house during the weekend. No sooner had she planned to start another conversation than the head teacher arrived. She waved at my dad while she was walking to the school gate. The head teacher was curious to know how my dad was able to bond with a new student on her first day in school. As soon as he sat down, he asked my dad what he and the new student was talking about. My dad said she told him the reason why she was enrolled in the school, and he also told her his reason. He said he told her about his deficiency in mathematics and what he has been doing to improve it. He told the head teacher that she promised to be teaching him mathematics when she is free. He did not tell the head teacher that she told him to come to her house. The head teacher was happy with what he heard. He appreciated my dad for always wanting to learn. He urged him to continue learning. He said very soon he will become the great mathematician that his dad wants him to become. The head teacher said Olivia is a very capable mathematician. He said she answered all the mathematics questions that were thrown at her during her interview. He said he was very surprised by her performance at the interview. He said he is sure of her abilities. He said my dad will benefit a lot from her if he is ready to learn from her. My dad told the head teacher that they have already concluded. What is left now is for her to start teaching him mathematics when she is free. The head teacher had the usual class with my dad like he used to. After the class, my dad went home. The next day at school, Olivia and my dad's friendship continued. Everybody in the school started noticing them. During the break, my dad wanted to eat at the school restaurant, but Olivia declined. She told my dad to eat from the food she brought. My dad didn't want to, but she forced him. Olivia said the food she brought is for both of them. When Olivia persisted, my dad had no option but to eat with Olivia. The next day, she did the same thing. My dad ate with her throughout the week. On Friday, when Olivia was about to leave school, she told my dad that she will be expecting him in her house. My dad asked her if 10 a.m. is good. Olivia said my dad should come by 11 a.m. because she has some laundry to do in the morning. My dad obliged. He told her that he will be at her house at exactly 11 a.m. She waved goodbye and made her way to the school gate. My dad woke up very early on Saturday morning. He used the opportunity to do his laundry. After he finished his laundry, he went to the kitchen to eat breakfast. He finished eating his breakfast at exactly 9 a.m. because he still had time. He went to the sitting room and started watching a movie. He watched the movie until 10 a.m. before preparing to leave. He went to his room and picked his bag. After picking his bag, he went to his mom's room and informed her that he wants to go and do some mathematics at his friend's house. My dad left the house at exactly 10:15 a.m. By 11:10 a.m., he was in front of Olivia's gate. He punched the bell outside the house and Olivia answered. When she detected that it was my dad that was at the gate, she rushed down from her room to open the gate for him. She led my dad to the sitting room. She told my dad to sit on the couch while she went to the fridge to get him a bottle of wine. She served him the bottle of wine and she switched on the television. She went to her room and brought out the books they will use for the lesson. After my dad finished drinking the wine, she started her lesson. She asked him to list the topics that have been taught in class. After that, she asked him to tick the topics he does not understand. My father listed the 6 topics that have been taught in class. After that, he ticked 2 out of the 6 as the ones he does not understand. Olivia started her lesson with the first topic. She explained it to my dad's satisfaction. After she was sure that my dad understood the first topic, she proceeded to the second topic. She taught my father the second topic to his satisfaction also. She made a topic that was very difficult for my father easy for him. He began to fall in love with mathematics because of Olivia. After the class, Olivia went to the kitchen to prepare food for my dad. After they finished eating, she put the television back on. They watched the movie for about an hour. While they were watching the movie, Olivia was looking for a way to get closer to my dad. She has started falling in love with him since she started teaching him. A few minutes after, she went to where my dad was sitting. She asked him if he was understood what she taught him. My dad replied in the affirmative. She moved her hand across his shoulder while she continued the conversation. She allowed my dad to feel comfortable with her hand across his shoulder before she made the next move. In her next move, she unbuttoned one of my dad's buttons. At that point, my dad knew something was about to happen, but he pretended as if he didn't notice Olivia's move. As soon as she unbuttoned him, her hands went straight to his left nipple. She started caressing it gently. At that point, my father became uncomfortable due to the pleasure. When Olivia noticed that, she continued what she was doing. After caressing his left nipple for some minutes, She unbuttoned him fully. Now, she was using her mouth to suck his left nipple while her left hand was caressing his right nipple. My dad was moaning loudly out of excitement. At that point, Olivia knew she had my dad where she wanted him. She continued her action until my dad could no longer control himself. He immediately pulled off his shirt and his trouser. His size was what grabbed the attention of Olivia. She stared, caressing every part of his body with her hands while her mouth remained on his left nipple. She did that for a very long time because she wanted to keep my dad in the mood. When she realized that my dad's mood was uncontrollable due to his moaning, she took him to her room. They continued sucking and romancing each other. After hours of kissing and sucking, Olivia opened his legs wide and invited my dad. He inserted it, and you could see how Olivia was enjoying my dad's action from her moaning. They had sex till they were exhausted. After the sex, they both lied down on the bed and slept off. My dad woke up at exactly 5:15 p.m. When he woke up, he woke Olivia up too. He told her to open the gate for him so that he can return home. Olivia said she wished my dad could pass in the night in her house. My dad said he cannot because his parents will be waiting for him at home. Olivia followed my dad to the gate and opened the gate for him. When my dad got home, my father was back from work. My dad was shocked. His dad asked him where he went to. He told him that he went to a friend's place to study mathematics. He told him that he informed his mom before leaving. His dad was not confused with his explanation. He told him to show him what they did where he went to. My father brought out his book and showed his dad. It was after he checked his book that he became satisfied. The next Monday, my dad and Olivia stood very close to each other on the assembly ground. They could not take their eyes off each other. They kept smiling at each other until they entered the class. Even when they entered their class, they sat close to each other. Their friendship became very strong than ever. They did everything in school together. Every week, my dad will go to Olivia's house for a mathematics lesson. Every visit comes with its sex. My dad and Olivia had sex every weekend. His dad could not stop him from visiting Olivia because he was seeing improvement in his mathematics. A few weeks before the exam, my dad and Olivia studied very hard together. My dad wanted to justify why he was leaving the house every weekend to go and study mathematics. The exam came and my dad did his best like he used to. A week after the exam, the head teacher invited all the students to school for their results. When my dad collected his result, he was happier than ever. He and Olivia was the best student in mathematics. Immediately he collected his result. He rushed to where Olivia was sitting to show her his result. Olivia was so happy for him. She hugged him tightly and kissed him on his cheek. For the first time in my dad's high school life, he was proud to take his results home. When he got home, he showed his mom the result. She was so happy. She hugged him and kissed him. She told him to sit down in the sitting room while she prepares a very delicious meal for him. My dad sat in the sitting room waiting for his meal. After 1 hour, his mom brought him his food. She also bought an expensive wine for him. He ate and drank to his satisfaction. When his dad arrived from work, he was the first person to welcome him. As soon as his dad sat on the couch, he brought out the result and presented it to his dad. After checking the result, his dad was short of words. He told him that he has made him proud for the first time. He said this is what he has always wanted from him. He said he does not want him to relent. He said he wants him to retain his position in the next exam. He promised to buy a very nice gift for him when he is coming from work the next day. My dad and Olivia's friendship continued to wax stronger. They continued their friendship until they graduated from high school. On the day of graduation, my dad did what Olivia has been expecting him to do for months. He called Olivia to a lonely place where there was no one. She was surprised by his action. She asked him what he wanted to tell her that made him bring her to a lonely place. My dad started by clearing his voice. He told Olivia that, although they have been having sex, but he wants to officially propose to her. He said he wants her to be the mother of his unborn children. Olivia was smiling all along. She wondered what prompted him to say what he was saying after they have been having sex for months. Olivia told my dad that she loves him. She said if she does not love, she wouldn't have had sex with him multiple times. They all smiled and joined their colleagues in the hall. After they graduated from high school, my dad and Olivia got admission to the same college to study the same course. They were both admitted into Texas State University to study mathematics. Their relationship continued in college until they graduated. On the day of their graduation from college, my dad knelt and proposed to Olivia. He officially gave her the ring that signified that she is his fiancée. Everybody was happy for them, especially those that knew them right from St. Paul High School. 3 months after my dad proposed to Olivia, they got married in a flamboyant style. The marriage had many dignitaries in attendance. Dignitaries from every sphere of life attended the wedding. The couples got a lot of gifts, which include a car, phones, television, laptops, and a whole lot more. After the wedding, they had to take some of their gifts to the needy because they cannot use all the gifts they were given. A year after the wedding, They gave birth to me. At exactly 2 years, I started attending primary school in our neighborhood. While I continued to proceed in my education, my parents noticed that I had the same problem that my dad had when he was young. They noticed that I used to pass every subject very well except mathematics. During my final exam in primary school, I did very well in all the subjects except mathematics. I would have been awarded the overall best student in my school if not for my poor performance in mathematics. After I graduated from primary school, my dad enrolled me at St. William's High School. I continued with my good performance in other subjects except for mathematics. My dad adopted his father's method whether there will be an improvement. But there was not. One day, my dad followed me to school just as his dad did to him. He told the head teacher that he wants me to be a good mathematician. He said it awkward how a child that has mathematicians as a parent be poor in mathematics. He urged the head teacher to do everything within his capabilities to make sure that I become a great mathematician like him. And my grandfather. He said he wants the knowledge of mathematics to continue running in his family. The head teacher immediately swung to action after my father left. He told me that he will be holding special classes with me after school hours. We held special classes for the first session, and there was no improvement. My father had the thought of taking me away from the school to another school, but every time he discussed it with my mom about it, she usually disagreed with him. She said she doesn't want me to be moving from one school to another. She said the frequent change of school can harm student academic performance. One day, my mother was on her way back home when she met a young man in the company of one of her friends. When she finished the conversation with her friend, she asked her about the young man that was with her. Her friend told her that the young man is her daughter's teacher. She said someone told her to employ him when she told the person that her daughter was not doing well in mathematics at school. Her friend said that since she employed the young man, she has seen tremendous improvement in the academics of her daughter, especially mathematics. My mom told her friend that she is having the same problem. She told her friend about my struggles with mathematics in school.
This is an interesting story that has suspense, betrayal, revenge, and many other things in it. It shows how the thinking of humans can be different. It is fun-filled and action-packed. Sit back and enjoy what the story has to offer. My mom and dad got married in a fashionable style. The marriage attracted the big personalities around the neighborhood and from all spheres of life. The wedding was the talk of the town then, as I was told. My mom was an actress while my dad is a politician. Because of their personalities and celebrity status, they were able to attract the big personalities in the country. My dad's political colleagues and my mom's colleagues in the film industry made the wedding very elaborate. It took 4 years after the wedding for my mom to give birth to me. My mom and dad had issues for 3 years after the wedding when there was no child. They carried out a series of tests and they were told by the doctors that there is nothing wrong with both of them. It was in the 4th year when my mom became pregnant that they stopped having issues. 9 months after, my mom gave birth to me. My mom and dad put the differences that they had aside and celebrated my birth elaborately. Famous artists were invited to come and thrill the guests that attended my ceremony. After my birth, my mom was not 100% good. Today she is at home and the next day she is in the hospital. Sometimes, my father would be at the office when he will receive a call from the neighbors that my mom is sick. He will rush from his office to take her to the hospital. When the sickness continued with no hope of a permanent cure in sight, the doctors advised my dad to look for a domestic worker. The doctors aid my mom's condition warrants that she does not do any difficult work. My mom had to stop her acting career because of her health. When my dad got home, he told my mom what the doctors told him. He told her that he has contacted one of his friends to help him get a domestic worker. My mom said she doesn't want a domestic worker. She said she can do her things herself. She told my dad that she has stopped acting so that she can rest and have time to take of the home. My dad insisted that he cannot go against the advice of the doctor. He reminded my mom how he used to receive calls from neighbors while in his office because of her health. He said what if they don't have neighbors or neighbors are not at home? He asked what would have happened to her. He said who knows if she might have passed on before he comes back from the office. When my mom realized that my dad was not ready to yield to her demand, she told my dad that she would get the domestic worker herself. The opinion of my dad kept my mom in deep thought. She didn't want anyone in her home. But as things stand, it seems she doesn't have any option. For hours, she thought of what to do. When she couldn't figure out what to do, she decided to call her friend Mrs. Isabella. Mrs. Isabella was my mom's old friend. Their friendship dates back to primary school. They went to the same primary school and high school. After they graduated from high school, they got admission into the same college to study the same course. They graduated in the same year and both of them were the best students in their class. So, they were very close. It was their marriage that separated them. Mrs. Isabella got married to a pilot. After their marriage, her husband got a job offer outside the United States of America. So, she had to leave the United States. When my mom called Mrs. Isabella, she was not with her phone. Therefore, she did not answer the call. After calling her thrice without any response, my mom dropped her phone on the table and lied down on the couch. She was fast asleep when she heard her phone ringing. Before she could open her eyes, the call ended. When she checked her phone, she saw that the call was from Mrs. Isabella. She returned the call immediately. This time, Mrs. Isabella responded swiftly. When she answered the call, she and my mom discussed a lot of things. It was when she asked my mom about her marriage that she noticed that something was not right. When she noticed how my mom was acting on the phone, Mrs. Isabella was forced to ask my mom what the problem was. My mom told Mrs. Isabella that she has not been 100% fit since she gave birth to me. She said it has been from one hospital to another. She said sometimes, it is the neighbors that usually call her husband at work to come and rush her to the hospital. She said in one of their visits to the hospital, the doctor advised her husband to get her a domestic worker. She said at first, she declined the idea of having a domestic worker, but it seems her husband is not ready to listen to her. She said her husband is hell-bent on following the instruction of the doctor. She said she needs Mrs. Isabella's advice. Mrs. Isabella's paused for some seconds. She didn't know what to say. My mom had to ask her if she was still on the phone. Mrs. Isabella said she doesn't subscribe to the idea of having a domestic worker, but since her health warrants that she gets one, she thinks that is the best option. Mrs. Isabella said her advice is that my mom should bring her younger sister to stay with her instead of getting a domestic worker. She said she thinks that is a better option. My mom did not even think about that option before. Therefore, when Mrs. Isabella mentioned it, it came as a relief for her. She thanked Mrs. Isabella for her advice and she ended the call. As soon as my mom ended the call, she lied on the couch. She was weighing both options. The option of getting a house help and the option of bringing in her younger sister to live with her. At last, she decided to go with Mrs. Isabella's opinion, which was to bring in her younger sister to come and stay with her. She lied on the couch waiting for my dad to return from work. When my dad returned from the office, he met her lying on the couch. She didn't even know when he entered. It was when I ran to my dad to welcome him that my mom woke up. When she woke up, my dad asked her why she slept on the couch instead of sleeping in her room. My mom said she just decided to lie on the couch. She said she didn't know when she slept off. After my dad ate his food, he was about to walk into his room when my mom called him. She said she has something important to discuss with him if he doesn't mind. My dad said he is very tired, but since she says it is something important, he has no option. He walked back to the sitting room and sat close to my mom on the couch. He asked her in a soft voice, "What do you want to tell me?" My mom said since he told her that he wants to get a domestic worker, she has been thinking of what to do. My dad quickly interjected. He said he isn't getting her a domestic worker on his wish. He said he is following the instructions of the doctor. He said he has known the doctor for many years and he trusts his judgment. He said if tomorrow the doctor calls him and tells him that she is medically fit and she doesn't need a domestic worker, he will change his opinion. He said, for now, he doesn't have any option. My mom said she understood that my dad is trying to protect her. She said she knows how challenging her health is. She said she is ready to welcome a domestic worker. My father smiled. He said everything he is doing is for her good. My dad said he is still waiting to hear from his friend on the issue of the domestic worker he told him. My mom said he shouldn't bother calling his friend anymore. She said she has gotten a solution. She said instead of bringing in a stranger to come and live with them, she has decided to bring in her sister to stay with them. My dad smiled. He said that is a good idea. He asked my mom whether she has informed her younger sister. She said that is the first thing she will do the next morning. My dad kissed my mom on her forehead and walked straight to his room. The next morning, when my dad was leaving for work, he told my mom not to forget to call her sister. As soon as my dad left, my mom put a call across to her younger sister. She called her sister thrice, but she didn't answer the call. When her sister wasn't answering her call, she called her mother to ask about her sister. When she called her mother, she answered the call immediately. She greeted her mother. Her mom said it's been a while she heard from her. She asked her if she is fine. My mom told her mom that she is not fine. As soon as her mom heard that, she became worried. My mom told her mom about her reoccurring illness. She told her mom that the doctor advised her husband to get a domestic worker. She said she has been thinking of it since her husband told her. She said her husband has called one of his friends to help him get a domestic worker, but she has told him that she doesn't want an insider. Her mom asked her what she wants to do. She said she has decided that her sister should come and stay with her until she becomes healthier. My mom asked her if she has discussed it with her younger sister. She said she hasn't. She said she has been calling her but she is not answering her call. Her mom said her younger sister went out but she doesn't know whether she went with her phone. She told my mom to stay on the phone while she checks her room. Her mom went to her younger sister's room to check on her. Unfortunately, she saw her phone in her room. She told my mom that her younger sister's phone is in her room. Her mom said she will notify her when her younger sister returns. She told her to call back when her younger sister returns because she wants her to tell her sister herself. 30 minutes later, my mom's younger sister returned from where she went to. As soon as she returned, my grandma notified my mom through a text message. 5 minutes later, she called her younger sister. Her younger sister was in the sitting room when she heard her phone ringing in her room. She hurried to her room to check who was calling her. As soon as she picked her phone on the bed, she saw my mom's number on her screen. She was very happy to see my mom's call because it's been a long time she spoke to my mom. She hurriedly answered the call and screamed on the phone. She accused my mom of not calling her for months. My mom had no option but to apologize to her. My mom told her that she has been calling her phone since morning, but she wasn't answering. She said she left her phone in her room when she went out. She said she didn't enter her room when she returned until she heard her phone ringing. She said there was no way she would have seen the missed calls. My mom told my sister that she called because she has something very important to discuss with her. Her sister said she knew that she doesn't call without a reason. She asked her what is that important that made her call repeatedly. She started in a sympathetic way to buy her sister over. She told her about her reoccurring illness. She told her how her husband usually rushes home to take her to the hospital. She told her how she had to stop acting too because of her health. She told her about the doctor's advice to her husband. She said the main reason that she called is that she doesn't want her husband to get a domestic worker because she doesn't want an outsider in her house. She said you can never tell what an outsider will have in mind. She said she wants her to live with her in her house. She said her presence will lift her and make her health condition better. My mom's younger sister remained silent for a few seconds. She didn't buy the idea of living with my mom, but my mom's story touched her heart. For minutes, she was still silent. My mom had to ask if she was still with her. My mom's younger sister said it's not an idea she supports, but she cannot say no to my mom. She said she will come over. She said she will tell her when she will be coming in a few days. My mom could not hide her joy. She appreciated her younger sister. She prayed for two before she ended the call. As soon as she ended the call, she called my grandma to inform her about her discussion with her younger sister. She told her how she convinced her with her emotional story. She said if she didn't go emotional, she is sure that her younger sister will not accept what she told her. She told my grandma that she is happy because she has finally agreed to come and live with her. My grandma asked her when she promised to come. My mom said she didn't tell her the exact day, but she promised to call her and inform her when she wants to come. My grandma was happy with my mom's younger sister's decision. She said she prays she doesn't change her decision. My mom told her that she thinks it's sealed from what she told her. She said she knows her younger sister very well, she doesn't hide her feelings. She said if it's something she wouldn't do, she would have told her immediately. She said since she said it herself that she will come, it's sealed. When my dad returned from work, my mom informed him about her discussion with her younger sister. She told him that her younger sister has agreed to live with them. She said her younger sister promised to call her soon to inform her about the exact day she will be coming. The news came as a relief for my dad. He picked his phone and called his friend who he told to help him look for a domestic worker. When his friend answered the call, he tried to explain to him the reason he hasn't gotten him a domestic worker. My dad said the reason he called him is to inform him that he doesn't need the services of a domestic worker anymore. At first, my dad's friend thought my dad was angry because he did not provide what my dad wanted as it when due. He told my dad to give him some time to help him look for a domestic worker. My dad told him that he isn't angry with him. He told him that my mom's younger sister has agreed to move in. He said that's why he doesn't need a domestic worker anymore. When my dad's friend heard that, he became relieved. He told my father that the option he opted for is better. 3 days after, my mom's younger sister called her. She called at exactly 8 p.m. when we were all having dinner. My mom left her phone in her room, so she didn't hear that her phone was ringing. It was until I stood up from my seat to pick something from my room that I heard the sound of her phone. I hurriedly opened her door and picked her phone. The call ended before I brought the phone to my mom. When I handed over the phone to my mom, she quickly checked her phone to see who called her. When she realized that the call came from her younger sister, she returned the call immediately. As soon as her younger sister answered the call, my mom apologized for missing her call. She told her that she left her phone in her room while she was eating in the dining. Her younger sister told her that she is fond of leaving her phone in her room while she is not there. She said it is one of the reasons why she usually misses important calls. My mom apologized again and told her sister that she will change. My mom's younger sister said she called to inform my mom that she will be coming on Sunday. She said she has some laundry to do on Saturday. She said after the laundry, she will start preparing. My mom was very happy with what she heard. My dad also smiled because he was hearing the conversation between my mom and her younger sister. My mom told her younger sister to take care of herself. She said she will be expecting her on Sunday. She appreciated her and ended the call. On Sunday morning, my mom's younger sister called my mom and told her that she was already on her way. As soon as my mom heard that, she rushed into the kitchen to prepare a delicious meal. 45 minutes after, my mom's younger sister arrived. She had to wait outside because our gate was locked. We usually lock our gate to prevent intruders from gaining access to our house. My mom's younger sister stood in front of our gate and called my mom again. She told her that she is already in front of the gate. My mom came to my door. She opened the door and woke me up. As soon as I woke, she told me to rush to the gate and open the gate for her younger sister. I was still trying to settle when Mom woke me, but when I heard that Mom's younger sister was waiting in front of our gate, I ran outside. I opened the gate for her. I collected her bag from her and I walked her into the sitting room. My mom came from the kitchen and hugged her sister. They hugged each other passionately because it has been a long time they saw each other. She hurriedly returned to the kitchen to check what she was cooking. 15 minutes after, my mom's food was ready. She sent me to my father's room to wake him up for breakfast. When I entered my dad's room, I told him what Mom told me to tell him. When I wanted to walk out of his room, he told me to stay. He said he heard a noise in the sitting room in his sleep. He asked me what caused the noise. I told him that it was Mom and her younger sister. He asked me when Mom's younger sister arrived. I told him that she arrived about 15 minutes ago. I said the noise he heard was when she arrived. After that, I left his room and joined Mom and her younger sister in the sitting room. 5 minutes after, Mom called us to the dining. A few seconds after we sat in the dining, Dad joined us. He greeted Mom's younger sister and he told her that he is happy to see her. He told her to make herself comfortable in the house. He said he hopes that she enjoys her stay in the house. We all ate Mom's delicious food before we all went to our rooms to take our baths and prepare for church. While we were about to leave for church, Mom showed her younger sister her room. She said she must have been tired from the journey she undertook in the morning, therefore, she should rest at home. She told her to put on the TV if she is bored. Dad told her that we won't stay long in the church because of her. He said if it wasn't because of the important program we have at church, everybody would have been at home today. We walked to Dad's car alongside Mom's younger sister. She helped us open the gate while we drove out. My mom told her to lock the gate. She said she should make sure her phone is close to her because when we return from church, she will call her to help us open the gate. 25 minutes after we left the house, we arrived at the church. Church service was already on, so we made our way to the back seat because all the front seats were occupied. We participated in church service until the service came to an end. After the church service, my dad and I waited for my mom in his car because she had to attend the executives meeting. After the executives meeting, Mom joined us in the car and we drove off. 25 minutes after, we arrived home. My mom called her sister's phone. As soon as she answered the call, she told her that we are at the gate. Mom's sister came to the gate and opened the gate. My dad drove in and she locked the gate. We were all walked into the sitting room while everybody took his or her place on the couch. My dad asked my mom's sister about her journey. She said her journey was fine. She said it wasn't stressful at all. She said as soon as she came out of the house, she got a taxi that brought her to our house. My dad wondered how a taxi was able to travel that far. He said taxis don't travel that far. My mom's younger sister told him that the taxi man is her longtime friend. She said he takes her to wherever she is going. My dad said he would like to have the contact of the taxi driver. He said there are some times that he doesn't live driving. He said sometimes he drives because he doesn't have a choice. He said if he has the taxi driver's cell phone number, he will call him whenever he doesn't feel like driving. My mom's younger sister picked her phone and searched for the taxi man's cell phone number. When she saw it, she dictated it to my dad. My dad called the taxi man immediately. He told him how he got his cell phone number. He told him the reason he collected his cell phone number. He told the taxi man to be on the lookout because he can call him at any time. The taxi man said he is available at any time. He said once he sees my dad's call, he would proceed to meet him where he is. My dad appreciated him for his kind gesture. He said he looked forward to working with him before ending the call. We continued the conversation until late in the evening. At exactly 8 p.m., we all moved to the sitting room to watch a popular series. The series finished at 9 p.m. and we all went into our rooms. The next morning, my mom's younger sister started her work in the house. She did all the laundry in the house before everyone woke up. When my dad woke up to prepare for work, he met her in the kitchen washing the dishes. My dad was surprised by what he saw. He asked her why she didn't wait until 7 or 8 a.m. before doing the house chores. My mom's younger sister said she likes doing her house chores very early in the morning before everybody wakes up so that she can move to other things that she needs to do. My dad appreciated her efforts. He said he wants to see more of that. He told her to help him open the gate. When she opened the gate, my dad drove off and she locked the gate. She walked back to the sitting room and sat on the couch. When my mom and I woke up, we met her sitting on the couch in the sitting room. My mom asked her why she was sitting in the sitting room instead of sleeping in her room. She said my mom knows that she doesn't sleep a lot. She said she woke up very early. She said she has done the laundry and washed the dishes. She said she was the one that opened the gate for her husband. My mom said she was surprised when she woke up and did not see her husband. She said he usually wakes her to help him open the gate when he is going to work. She said she was surprised when she woke up and realized that he has gone to work. My mom hugged her sister tightly. She appreciated her for standing by her during her trial period. On Thursday, my mom woke up feeling sick. She couldn't move her body. She had to be taken to the hospital by her sister. As soon as she got to the hospital, she called my dad and informed him. She told him that the doctor said my mom will be admitted for 3 days. When my dad left his office, he stopped at the hospital to check on my mom. He met her in a bad condition. She was very weak. She couldn't do anything. She was even finding it difficult to talk to my dad. At exactly 9 p.m., the nurses came into the room and told everyone to leave. They said my mom needs a lot of rest. They said visitors are only allowed to see the patients from 9 to 9 p.m. My dad and my mom's younger sister left the hospital. They drove home in my dad's car. As soon as I heard the horn of my dad's car, I ran outside to welcome him. I have been bored at home since I returned from school. I knew mom was taken to the hospital, but I didn't know she will spend 3 days there. When my dad opened his door, I saw only my mom's younger sister. I asked Dad about my mom. He said my mom is still at the hospital. He said the doctor has admitted my mom and she will spend at least 3 days at the hospital. As soon as I heard that, tears started flowing down my cheeks. I told my dad that I want to see my mom. My dad said he isn't going to work the next day. He said as soon as I return from school, he will take me to the hospital to see my mom. The next morning, I was reluctant to go to school. All I wanted was to see my mom. But I couldn't skip school because of my test. I left home at exactly 7:15 a.m. When I got to school, I was just hoping for school to close so that I can return home. At exactly 1 p.m., the school timekeeper rang the bell for the end of the day's activities. As soon as I heard the bell, I made my way to the school gate. As soon as I came out of the school gate, I saw a taxi. The taxi drove me home. I was surprised when I met the gate open. I walked in and I locked the gate. I walked into the sitting room but I didn't find anyone. I wondered why everywhere was silent. But my dad's car that I saw in the compound gave me the impression that my dad is still in the house. I went to his room and I didn't find anyone in the room. I decided to check my mom's younger sister's room to check if she was in her room. As I got close to the door, I started hearing my mom's younger sister moan. Her moan was so loud that you could tell that Dad was riding her very well. I stood in front of the door and I was hearing my dad and my mom's younger sister kissing and romancing themselves. It was obvious that they were enjoying what they were doing. I was only hearing them, but I couldn't see them. I went to the back of the room with the hope that I could see them from the window. Unfortunately, the window was tall. I looked for a table and placed it at the back of the window. As soon as I climbed the window, I was able to see them. I saw my dad and my mom's younger sister naked. My dad was on top of her. His mouth was on her mouth, kissing her. His left hand was on her left breast while his right hand was under. He was rubbing her boobs with his left hand while he was using his right all over her body. After romancing themselves for minutes, they finally had sex. When they were all exhausted, I came down from the table and took the table away from the window. I came back to the sitting room and sat as if I didn't see anything. After 30 minutes, my dad and my mom's younger sister came out of her room. They were shocked to see me in the sitting room. My dad asked me when I came back from school. I told him I came back not too long ago. I said I sat in the room because I didn't see anybody. My dad said he went to my mom's younger sister's room to help her fix her toilet. I looked at my father and shook my head. I never knew he could lie to me or betray my mom. He told me to take off my school uniform and join him in his car so that we can go to the hospital. I hurriedly went to my room and pulled off my school uniform. I joined my dad and my mom's younger sister in the car and we drove off. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
Love can be found anywhere. It can be found in weird places and weird circumstances. This is a story that talks about how true love was found in an unusual circumstance. An emergency phone call that was made to solve a very important issue led to a great love story. Daniel is a respected police officer. He does his work diligently. He has received several recognitions from a lot of government agencies for standing firm in trial periods. He has led many successful operations. Daniel joined the police force because of his father. His father was a police officer too, but he retired before Daniel joined the force. Daniel chose to join the police force because of the stories of different operations he heard from his father. During weekends when Daniel's father is at home, he usually tells him about dangerous operations they went. All these stories and the love Daniel had for the United States made him decide to join the United States Police Force. When Daniel graduated from high school, his father was still in service. He usually follows his father to the office once in a while because his father was a senior police officer. From there, he started knowing little things about the police force. He followed his father to the office one Sunday morning. Unfortunately, gunmen attacked their base. The policemen were able to overpower the gunmen, but they lost some officers. Daniel's father was very sad that day because he has just been promoted as the head of that base. When they got home, Daniel's father explained to him about the dangers involved in joining the police. He asked him if he saw the casualty they recorded when the gunmen invaded their base. Daniel replied in the affirmative. He said it happens almost every day. He said policemen die in the course of carrying out their duty every day. He said he was telling him that to know what he wants to get into. 1 year after Daniel graduated from high school, he got admission into Miami College. One day, some gunmen invaded their campus. Daniel joined the security men in overpowering the gunmen. From then on, people began to notice him in college. The head of security in the college personally invited Daniel to the school's security guard. Every Saturday and Sunday, Daniel usually joins the security guard in their training. After 4 years, Daniel graduated from college. As soon as Daniel graduated from college, he joined the police force. Fortunately, his first posting was to his father's base, but unfortunately, his father retired 2 months before he was posted. Daniel was happy that he was able to fulfill his dream of becoming a police officer. He carried out his duties diligently without fear or favor. He was always ready to tackle the enemies of the state. 5 months into Daniel's stay at his base, a beautiful female police officer was transferred to his base. On her arrival, she was brought to Daniel's office for briefing because he is her immediate boss. Because of Mary's hard work, she became Daniel's favorite officer. They did everything together. They went on deadly assignments together. As time passed by, they began to fall in love with each other, but none of them was ready to make the first move. Months went by without any tangible approach from any of them. One day, Daniel went to the gym with his friend Tony. After the gym, Daniel told Tony about Mary. He told him how he cannot stop thinking about Mary. He said he is afraid to share his feelings with Mary because of 2 things. He said the first is that if Mary accepts to date him, it might impact negatively on their work. He said his love for her can interfere negatively in their job to the extent of giving her preferential treatment over others. He said the second reason is that if Mary does not accept to date him, she might start disrespecting him. She might not give him the respect she used to give him before. Tony told Daniel that love supersedes everything he is thinking about. He said if he likes Mary, he should do the needful before another man snatches her away from him. After listening to Tony's advice, Daniel decided to take the bold step. He called Mary when he got home and asked her if she was free the next day. Mary told Daniel that she will be free the next day. He told her to meet him at the Miami resort the next day. "Do you want me to do anything for you, sir?" Mary asked. "No," Daniel replied. He said there is an important thing he wants to tell her. Mary agreed to meet Daniel at the Miami resort the next day. When she dropped the call, she started thinking about why Daniel wanted to see her. In her mind, she started thinking if Daniel was ready to tell her what she has been craving to hear from him since the day she was posted to his base. On Sunday morning, Mary did her normal cycling exercise. After the exercise, she took breakfast. While she was eating her breakfast, she called Daniel to ask him the time they are to meet. Daniel gave her the honor of choosing the time she felt will be most comfortable for her. Mary said she thinks 12 is better. Daniel said he has no problem with the time she chose. After eating breakfast, Mary went to the bathroom and took a shower. At that time, the time was 8:30 a.m. She felt she had a lot of time because her house is just 30 minutes drive to the Miami resort. Not knowing what to do, Mary put on her television set and started watching a movie she bought. She has been watching the movie for more than a month. She has not been able to complete watching the movie because of her busy schedule at the office. She thought that, since she still has like 2.5 hours before she leaves home, the best thing is for her to continue her movie from where she stopped. She loves the movie so much because the movie details the day-to-day job of a police officer. The movie was recommended to her by one of her colleagues. She watched the movie until 10:30 a.m. When she noticed that the time was 10:30 a.m., she switched off the television and went to the bathroom to take her bath. By 11:30 a.m., she has finished dressing and was ready to hit the road. By 12:05 a.m., she got to the Miami resort. At first, she didn't see Daniel, so she had to call him. When Daniel answered the call, she asked him if he has arrived at the Miami resort. Daniel told her that he has been there for more than 30 minutes because he wanted to be there before her. She told him that he should come and pick her at the front of the resort because she cannot see him. Daniel rushed to the gate to pick Mary. They walked to where Daniel was sitting. Daniel ordered for a bottle of wine while Mary ordered preferred juice. For more than 5 minutes, Daniel did not say anything. He kept thinking if what he was about to do was the best. At some point, he wanted to change his mind, but he kept remembering what Tony told him. He didn't know how he will feel if he sees Mary with another man. Mary sat for 5 minutes and she didn't hear anything from Daniel. She asked him why he said he wanted to see her. She said she was surprised when he told her on phone to meet him at the Miami resort because she knows him as someone who likes staying indoor when he is not at work. Daniel told Mary that he has his reasons for telling her to meet him at the resort. He felt the resort was the best place to say it. He said he has been thinking about what he wants to tell her for months, but he thinks this is the right time for him to say it. He said everybody knows him in office as a disciplined man. He said they know him as someone who does not associate with the female gender at work or home. He said it has been like that since he was young. He said the reason for such is not that he doesn't like women, but since he was a child, he has never met a woman that was diligent as Mary. He said the first day he saw her in his office, he thought she was like other female officers who don't take their job seriously. But his perception changed when they went for an operation in Michigan. He said he was happy with the courage she displayed in the operation. He said besides that, he has been watching her closely at work. He said how she faces her job squarely. He said female police officers like Mary are rare in the police force. He said all these and many more are why he has decided to make the decision he is about to tell her. He said he doesn't know how she will accept what he was about to tell her, but what he is about to tell her is nothing but the truth. What do you want to tell me? Mary asked. Daniel said he wants to tell her that he loves her, and he will want to spend the rest of his life with her. Mary could not utter a word, even though it was what she wanted to hear. She didn't know her immediate boss could be this romantic. The look on Daniel's face showed he meant what he said, so it was not difficult for Mary to make her decision. Moreover, it was something she has been waiting to hear from him. Mary looked at Daniel in his face. She told him that she has been craving to hear what he just told her for months. Mary said she fell in love with Daniel the first day she stepped foot in the base. She said she has been hearing positive reviews about him before she was posted there. She said she heard more of his positive reviews when she entered the base the first day. She said policemen who take their work diligently like Daniel are rare. She urged him to continue to do more for the police force. After they had their rink, Daniel invited Mary to his house. Daniel drove in his car while Mary drove in her car. After 20 minutes of leaving the Miami resort, they arrived at Daniel's house. Daniel showed Mary around his house. He showed her all the awards he has won in the course of his service. He took her to his gym center, and his swimming pool. After going round the rouse, they finally settled down on the couch. Daniel and Mary continued their conversation. This time, their conversation changed from their work duties to a more intimate one. They talked about sex. Daniel asked Mary if she was comfortable with having sex on the first date. Mary said she doesn't think it is bad. At that point, Daniel knew what Mary said was an invite. He went very close to Mary and kissed her. It was as if Mary was waiting for the kiss. She kissed him and they started kissing passionately. While they were kissing, Daniel's hand was in Mary's boobs. He was fondling it while Mary was using her hand to romance his nipple. The moaning was so loud that they had to put on the television so that neighbors won't hear their moan. After kissing and romancing for some minutes, Daniel carried Mary to his bed. They had sex until they late in the evening. After the sex, Daniel and Mary freshened up. Mary entered her car and left. After that day, their love became stronger. They continued to visit themselves often. Every visit was an avenue to have sex. Mary decided that they should keep their relationship away from their colleagues. Nobody in their office knew about their relationship. After 6 months of dating, Daniel decided to take the bold step. He decided to officially wed Mary. He decided that the first thing to do was to take Mary to his parents. On Friday, he called his parents and told them that he has a surprise package for them. He said they should prepare for him on Sunday. That Sunday morning, he told Mary to meet him at his house. When Mary arrived, they had quick sex like they usually do before they headed to Daniel's parents' house. When they got there, Daniel's parents were surprised to see him with a lady. They didn't know anything about her relationship before that day. He hugged his parents. He told them that the surprise package he has for them is Mary. He told them he and Mary are colleagues at work. He told his parents how he was made her immediate boss on the first day she was posted to his base. He told them how he was always thinking about her but didn't dare to approach her. He told them how Tony acted as the game changer. He told them how he finally summoned the courage to approach Mary after Tony told him to do the needful. He said their relationship has lasted for 6 months and he thinks this is the right time to finally tie the knot with Mary. Daniel's parents were very happy to hear that. They told Daniel that it is their joy to see their grandchild. They urged them to do the planning as fast as possible. They also told Daniel and Mary to carry them along in the planning. Daniel's mom prepared lunch for everyone. They ate to their satisfaction before taking their leave. While they were about to take their leave, Daniel's father asked his son if he has seen Mary's parents. He said he hasn't, but they are planning to do that as soon as possible. Daniel's father said that was not good enough. He said he should see Mary's parents as soon as possible. Daniel joined Mary outside after he listened to his father. Mary was curious to know what kept Daniel back, so she asked him as soon as he joined her. Daniel said his father asked him if they have seen her parents. He said he told his father that they haven't, but they are planning to do so. Daniel said his father urged him to do so as soon as possible. While they were driving home, he told Mary to call her parents on phone. He said she should inform them of their visit. He said she should ask them when they want him to come and see them. Mary put a call through to her dad. She told him that she wants to bring someone to him. She asked him when she should come and see him. Mary's father said he and her mother will be free on Saturday. He said she can come anytime on Saturday. With that, Daniel and Mary decided that they will see Mary's parents on Saturday. Mary slept at Daniel's house that day because she was very tired. They went to work together the next day. Their colleagues were surprised to see Mary coming down from Daniel's car. They decided to make their relationship public. So, they started going to work together. When people began to see them together, they knew something was happening between the two of them. On Saturday morning, Mary and Daniel made their way to Mary's parents' house. 1 hour after they arrived there, they were welcomed by Mary's parents. They were surprised to see Daniel with Mary. They asked their daughter who Daniel is. She narrated to them how she met Daniel. She told them that Daniel is her immediate boss at work. She told her parents how Daniel has been a loving boss. She said he has moved from the level of a boss to the level of fiancé. She told them that Daniel is the person she is dating and they are planning to get married as soon as possible. Mary's father was very happy with what his daughter told him. He welcomed Daniel again. He asked him about work, his parents, and many other things. While Daniel was being queried by Mary's dad, Mary and her mom ran to the kitchen to prepare lunch. After 45 minutes, lunch was ready and they all ate together. After lunch, Mary and Daniel asked to take their leave. They were followed to the car park by Mary's parents. They kept advising them till they left. When they got home, Daniel called his father and informed him about his visit to Mary's parents' house. He told his father that he was accepted very well and they have given him the opportunity to marry their daughter. 1 week after, Daniel and Mary picked a date for their wedding. Their wedding was widely publicized by their friends and colleagues. Everybody was happy for them because of their diligence at work. The wedding day arrived and it was a scene to behold. Guests came from all spheres of life to witness the occasion. Almost every police officer in Miami was at their wedding. They got a lot of gifts from the police high command. The couples got a new car from their boss because they fulfilled certain conditions. The police force had a rule then that if police officers marry each other, they will get a brand new car as a gift. As soon as Daniel collected the car gift, he handed over his old car to one of his friend that does not have a car. After the wedding party, Daniel and Mary returned to their hotel room. The next day after the wedding, they traveled to Paris for their honeymoon. 2 weeks after, they returned to Miami because their holiday was over. The next day, they resumed back at work. Before their resumption, the Miami police have been fighting some deadly armed robbers. The armed robbers had sophisticated weapons. Therefore, the police found it difficult to overpower them. The armed robbers killed a lot of policemen during their cause of operation. As soon as Daniel and Mary resumed at the office, they were drafted to the unit that was saddled with the responsibility of arresting the deadly armed robbers. Daniel and Mary swung to work immediately. They went to the streets of Miami and interrogated people, asking them what they know about the deadly armed robbers. After 3 days of interrogation, they finally got a lead. They met a tipster who gave them the hideout of the deadly armed robbers. The tipster told them that the best time to invade the hideout was in the night when they are asleep. With the information they got from the tipster, Daniel and Mary returned to base and assembled a team of armed policemen for the operation. They left the base at exactly 11 a.m. and they got to the hideout at midnight. As soon as they got to the hideout, they forcefully opened the gate and went into the apartment. In the process of opening the gate, the armed robbers were able to detect the police and they engaged them in a heavy shootout. The shootout lasted for more than an hour with casualties from each side. After the shootout, the policemen killed 5 of the robbers and arrested the rest. While the policemen were assembling in front of their car, they noticed that Mary was missing. They went back into the building to search for her. While they were searching for her, they heard a loud noise from one of the rooms in the apartment. The policemen rushed down to the room and found Mary in a pool of blood. She sustained an injury during the shootout. She was rushed to the bus and taken to the hospital. Daniel could not sleep that night. The next morning, he was the first person to arrive at the hospital. When he got there, he was allowed to see Mary, but she could not talk to him. As days went by, Mary's health deteriorated to the extent that she was using oxygen to breathe. Her condition deteriorated to the extent that friends and family were barred from seeing her. Days went by and Mary's condition did not improve. Daniel couldn't concentrate at work. His boss noticed his lack of concentration too. One day he called Daniel into his office and handed him a letter. At first, Daniel thought he has been sacked. When he got home and opened the letter, he realized that he was given 2 weeks' break to deal with the situation at hand. The break gave Daniel more opportunity to be with Mary. He goes to the hospital very early in the morning and leaves very late in the night. Most times, it is the doctors that usually tell him to leave because they don't allow people to sleep with patients at the hospital. On Sunday morning, while Daniel was getting ready to visit Mary at the hospital, he received a painful phone call. While he was putting on his dress, he heard his phone ringing. The number looked strange to him, so he didn't want to answer the phone at first. But when the call did not stop, he decided to answer to know why the person kept calling him. As soon as he answered the call, he heard the voice of Dr. Henry, who was the special doctor that was assigned to treat his wife. Dr. Henry told Daniel that he regrets what he wants to tell him, but there was nothing he could have done to save the situation. Dr. Henry said he is afraid to tell Daniel that Mary is dead. The cell phone fell from Daniel's hand and he began to cry profusely. He cried from morning till night. He locked himself up in his room and was crying. He refused to open the door for anybody that came to see him. 3 days after Mary's death, a police delegation led by the police boss came to visit Daniel. They found his door locked, but they noticed that he was inside. They could hear his cry from where they were standing. The boss called Daniel and told him to open the door, but Daniel refused. The police had no option but to force their way inside the house to prevent Daniel from doing something harmful. When they gained entrance into the house, they met Daniel in a sorrowful state. The house was scattered. The smell of alcohol took over the house. They noticed that Daniel has been drinking since the day he heard of his wife's death. They cleaned the house and arranged everything that Daniel scattered in the house. While they were leaving, they took Daniel with them. Daniel was lodged He went through the phone records in search of the number of the lady that called. After some minutes, he was able to get the number. He called the lady and appreciated her for a job well done. He encouraged her to continue giving security agencies relevant information that would lead to the arrest of the people who have decided to terrorize the state. Daniel told the lady that he will like to meet her to show his appreciation because the operation gave him a promotion at work. The lady was so happy to hear about Daniel's promotion. She said she didn't want to accept his invite in the first place, but the good news he told her is what changed her mind. She asked Daniel if he was calling her with his cell phone number and Daniel replied in the affirmative. She said she will call him back and tell him where and when to meet her. Daniel appreciated the lady for accepting his wife before ending the call. His boss was already at the door to decorate him with his new rank while he was on the phone. When he noticed that Daniel has ended the call, he went into Daniel's office with some other officers to officially decorate Daniel with his new rank. While Daniel was driving home, his phone started ringing. He didn't answer the call because the number looked strange and he didn't want to break the law. The call kept coming in, but Daniel did not answer the call. When Daniel got home, he called the number to know who was calling him. When he called the number, Precious answered the call. Daniel said he doesn't know anybody called Precious. She had to explain herself before Daniel recognized. When Daniel eventually knew that it was the lady that made the emergency call, he pleaded with her. He told her that he did not pick the call because the number looked strange and he was driving home at that time. Precious said she called to inform him of where and where they will meet. She said Daniel should come to the Fun Garden on Sunday by 1 p.m. if he wants to see her. Daniel obliged. He told Precious that he will be there on Sunday by 1 p.m. Precious said goodbye to Daniel on the phone. She told him to take very good care of himself before ending the call. As soon as Precious ended the call, Daniel went to his bed and slept off. On Sunday morning, Daniel woke up early as he usually does. His first point of call was his gym center. After spending 1 hour in the gym, he returned to his room to rest. After resting for 30 minutes, he went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. After taking breakfast, he returned to the couch to take some rest because he still had time. He set his alarm to 11 a.m. so that he does not sleep off. At exactly 11 a.m., his alarm started ringing. The alarm was so loud that he had to wake up even though he was fast asleep. When he woke up, he went to the bathroom to take his bath. He took his bath, dressed up, and sat back on his couch waiting for 12:30 before he hits the road. At exactly 12:30, he made his way to the Fun Garden. He called Precious and told her he was already on his way. Precious told him that she has been there waiting for him. Upon hearing that, Daniel started speeding because he doesn't want Precious to get angry even though the time she gave him was not up. At exactly 12:50 a.m., Daniel arrived at the Fun Garden. He called Precious to come and pick him at the gate. Precious came to the gate to pick him. When they entered the Fun Garden, they looked for a nice place to sit. Precious started by congratulating Daniel on his promotion at work. After congratulating him, She said she was curious to know why he wanted to see her. Daniel started by telling Precious about Mary. He told her how he met Mary, how they got married, and she died a few days after sustaining gunshot wounds in an operation. He told Precious that he has not been himself since the incident. Precious felt sorry for Daniel. She said she feels what he has been going through, but she wants him to remain strong and resolute. Daniel told Precious that the reason he invited her was that he was looking for someone he can confide in. He said since Mary died, he doesn't have a female friend that he shares his problems with. He told Precious that he wants her to be his friend and if possible his lover. Precious looked at Daniel in the eyes. She didn't know what to say. She felt Daniel's pain. Precious took Daniel's car key and told Daniel to follow her to her house. 10 minutes after, they arrived at Precious's house. They went in and sat down on the couch. Precious knew Daniel was sex-starved, so she wanted to give him sex. As soon as they sat on the couch, her hand started going through Daniel's body. Before you know it, Daniel's clothes were already off. Precious took off her clothes too and walked Daniel to her bedroom. They continued to have sex until late in the evening before Daniel took his leave. After that day, Precious and Daniel became lovers. They did everything together. Daniel was able to find comfort after Mary's death. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or your thoughts on this. My name is Angel. I'm 18 years old. I was born in Michigan. I started my early life in Michigan. I lived with my parent in a decent apartment in Michigan. I attended Michigan High School where I completed my high school education. After I graduated from high school, I moved to Kentucky with my sister. My sister also lived with my parent until she graduated from high school. She moved to Kentucky when she got a job with the Kentucky Postal Services. When I graduated from high school, my sister thought it was wise to join her in Kentucky so that she could help me secure a job. 4 months into my stay with my sister, I got a job at the Kentucky Mall. The Kentucky Mall was one of the biggest malls in the United States of America. A huge number of people come into the mall every day. I was enjoying the job because it allowed me to meet a lot of people. I receive a lot of gifts from strangers who just admire how I do my job. One day while I was at work, a young man in his mid-20s approached me. He asked for my name. I told him my name is Angel. He wanted to continue the conversation but I declined because I was on duty. Our superiors watch what we do at our duty post through the CCTV camera. We were given a rule book before we were employed. The rule book contains the do's and don'ts of the organization. It is stated in the rules that staff that violate any rule will be sacked immediately. One of the rules is that staff are not allowed to hold conversations with customers aside from business conversations. When I noticed that Terry's conversation was about violating the rules and regulations of the organizations, I quickly stopped him and told him to leave. Terry insisted on having my cell phone number before he leaves, so I gave him. I warned him not to call my cell phone during working hours because I will not be able to answer his call. I told him to call me around 6 p.m. if he wants to talk to me. Terry collected my number and left. When Terry left, Mr. Patrick came to me and asked me why I was talking to Terry during business hours. I explained to him that what happened was not my fault. I told him I told Terry to leave when I noticed he was talking about something outside the business. I told Mr. Patrick there was no way I would be able to know that he didn't mean to buy something the first time he approached. Mr. Patrick was satisfied with my explanation. He told me to be careful with male customers so that I do not fall in the wrong hands of the law of the organization. I thanked Mr. Patrick and he left. I continued attending to customers until 6 p.m. When I checked the time and it was 6 p.m., I called the attention of the manager. I told him my time was up. The manager told me to wait for the person that will replace me before I leave. He said he has contacted her and she told him she will be there in 10 minutes. He pleaded with me to wait for her. At exactly 6:10 p.m., Mariah arrived. She knew I wasn't happy because it was her lateness that kept me at the duty post longer than expected. I handed over the goods to her and I went into the accounting room to calculate my sale for the day. At about 6:45 p.m., I finished my calculation. As soon as I finished my calculation, I handed over the money to the manager and I went into the bathroom to change my clothes because I wasn't putting on our company's uniform. After changing into my homeware, I headed out to my house. I was about to board a bus when I heard my phone ringing. I didn't pick the call because I wanted to settle down in the taxi before picking any call. No sooner had I sat down in the taxi than my phone began to ring again. I brought out my phone from my bag to see who was calling me. When I looked at my phone, I noticed that the call was from Terry. I didn't want to pick the call in the first instance because I wouldn't be comfortable talking to him in a taxi. But when he did not stop calling, I eventually picked the call and I told him that I was in a taxi. He asked me why I left work late. I told him the person that was supposed to replace me if I leave did not come early enough, so I had to wait for her. I told him to call me in the next 30 minutes because I would be at home by then. He told me he would do that and I dropped the call. At about 6:30, I arrived home. I was very tired and hungry. I went to my room and take a shower. After taking the shower, I went to the dining to eat lunch. After my lunch, I went back into my room to rest. I wanted to sleep well so that I would be ready for the activities of the next day. My job is very demanding. Most times, I usually stand on my feet from when I resume in the morning until when I close in the evening. No sooner had I lied on my bed than my cell phone started ringing. Without checking the screen of my cell phone, I knew it was Terry. I answered the call and it was Terry. He asked me how my day went and I told him that my day was stressful. I told him that I was about to sleep before his call came through. I told him that I wouldn't have picked his call if I was not the one that told him to call me back in the next 30 minutes. I told him that whenever I get home from work, I take my shower, eat and go to bed because I am always tired. Terry said he knew how demanding my work was because he had a cousin that worked in a mall a few years ago. He said his cousin complained of tiredness whenever he comes from work too. Terry said he would allow me to sleep but I should tell him when I will be off duty so that we can go out and spend some time together. I told him I will be off duty on Sunday. He asked me where he should take me to. I told him that we can meet anywhere he feels is okay. Terry insisted that I choose a place, so I settled for the Kentucky Museum. I told him it has been my dream to visit the museum since I was young. I said I felt this is the opportunity I have to visit the museum for the first time. Terry and I bid each other good night and I dropped the call. With the money I gave him, he saw that everything was perfect before he allowed me to leave. I got home very late because I stayed longer than expected at the office. I ate first because I was very hungry. After eating, I went into my room and took a shower. After taking shower, I lied down on my bed waiting for the next day. While I was surfing the internet on my phone, Terry's call came through. I answered the call. We talked about many things. He said he couldn't wait to meet me the next day. I said I also can't wait. He noticed that I was feeling sleepy, so he didn't take much of my time. He told me to go and sleep so that I will be healthy for the next day. I bided him goodbye and I dropped the call. Immediately I dropped the call. I covered myself in my duvet and I slept off. I woke up very early the next morning because I had some laundry to do. I packed all my laundry clothes into the bathroom and I began to watch them. I finished my laundry in about an hour. As soon as I finished my laundry, I took my bath immediately. After taking my bath, I slept on my bed waiting for my sister to call me for breakfast. 15 minutes later, I hear a knock on my door. I stood up to check who was at my door. When I opened my door, I met my sister standing in front of my door with tea and her bread in her hands. She said she decided to bring it to my room because she knew I was tired. I thanked my sister and collected the tea from her. I took my tea and returned to my bed. The only thing I was waiting for was Terry's call. I didn't want to call him myself in order not to sound desperate. While I waited for Terry's call, I took one of the novels I bought recently and started reading. 30 minutes later, Terry called. He asked me how my night was and I told him it was fine. He asked me if I have taken breakfast and I told him I took tea and bread. He asked me what time do I want us to meet. I told him I am free throughout the day, so I am fine with any time he chooses. He said he would come and pick me with his car by 11 a.m. He said he doesn't want me to go through any stress. I was speechless as Terry was talking. I could see how caring he was. I told him I will be waiting for him in front of my house before he arrives. My sister was in the sitting room when I was talking to Terry. When I dropped the call, she came to my door and knocked. I was wondering why my sister was at my door again while I stood up to open the door. When I opened the door, I saw her standing at my door. She asked me who I was talking to. I told her the person I was talking to is my friend that I met at my workplace. I told her that he wants to take me to the museum today. She asked me why I didn't tell her about Terry before. I said Terry is just a friend and there is nothing between us. She told me to take care of myself when we go out. I told her that Terry will come and pick me in front of our house, therefore, she will have the opportunity to see him. After talking to my sister, I sat on the couch in anticipation of Terry's arrival. At exactly 11 a.m., I saw Terry's call. When I answered the call, Terry told me that he was in front of our gate. I rushed outside to meet him. When I got outside, Terry was sitting in his car. I told him to come down and say hi to my sister before we leave. I brought Terry into our sitting room and I called my sister. I left Terry and my sister and rushed down into my room to dress. After dressing, I came out and told Terry that we can leave. Terry and I walked to his car and we drove off. 30 minutes later, we arrived at the Kentucky Museum. The museum was filled to the brim as different people from other states came to see how the museum looked like. Terry took me through all the galleries of the museum. At each gallery, a museum worker was stationed there to tell people about the story of the gallery. After going through the galleries in the museum, we went to the restaurant to get some food and drinks. While we were eating, I noticed that Terry could not take his eyes off me. The looks on his eyes suggested that he had something in his mind. I sat patiently waiting for Terry to tell me what was in his mind because I was ready to accept him if he proposes to me. A few minutes into the discussion, Terry began to ask me relationship questions. Terry asked me if I am in a relationship. I told him I am not in any relationship. He asked me why. I told him I wasn't in any relationship because I haven't someone I love. He asked me if I have been in any relationship before. I told him I dated a guy while I was in high school, but it didn't last long. I told him that the guy and I went our separate ways when we graduated from high school. I didn't allow him to finish his question before I asked mine too. I asked him if he is in any relationship. Terry said he is not into any relationship. I asked him why he is not in any relationship and he said his answer correlates with the answer I gave him when he asked me the same question. Terry said he has been searching for the right person but he hasn't gotten one. He said since the day he saw me at the mall, he hasn't stopped thinking about me. He said everything about me just wowed him. He said he wants us to be dating. He said he will be happy if I accept his proposal. I remained speechless for a few seconds. I didn't know what to say. I loved Terry but I didn't want to appear to him as a cheap girl. So I decided to stretch it a little bit. I told Terry that I am afraid of men. I said I don't want to fall in love with a man who will later stop caring for me. I told him how most men run after ladies because of sex. Once they get what they want, they abandon the lady. Terry interjected. He said he is not like that. He said he will take care of me. He said he will love me to the end of time. He said if he didn't love me, he wouldn't have come to me the day he saw me. He said I should try and understand him and give him a chance to be my boyfriend. I looked at Terry in the eyes and it appeared to me like he meant what he was saying. He looked like someone that loved me truly. I told Terry that I heard what he said but he has to give me time to think about it very well. He said he is not in a rush. He said I should take my time to make the best decision that is good for me. After the long discussion, we left the restaurant. There was a concert going on at the museum, so we went there to relax. The invited musicians sang melodious songs that make everybody stand on their feet. I didn't know when Terry and I began to dance. We danced like couples throughout the show. The concert ended at 4:30 p.m. and I told Terry that it was time to go home. I told him that my sister will start calling me if she does not see me by 6 p.m. We went to where Terry's car was parked and we entered the car. At exactly 5 p.m., we arrived at my house. Terry came down from the car while I also came down. I was wondering why he came down. He walked close to me and he hugged me tightly. He whispered in my ear that he loves me. He said I should think about what he told me very well and make a decision that will make him happy. While I was about to enter my gate, he asked me that what time should he be expecting a positive reply from me. I told him that I need about a week to think about it. I said after a week, I will make my decision and I will let him know. I waved him goodbye while he entered his car. I waited for him to drive off before I entered my house. When I entered our house, I met my sister sitting on the couch. She welcomed me and asked me how my day went. I told her how Terry took care of me. I told her about all the places Terry took me to in the museum. I told her how he stood by me in all the places we went to. My sister said she knew he would be a good man when she saw him. I sat close to my sister on the couch and I began to wonder if I should tell her about Terry's proposal. The way she accepted him when I was describing how he took care of me to her gave me the confidence that my sister will not have any problem with me dating Terry. I finally summoned the courage to tell her about Terry's proposal. I went very close to her and I held her arm. I told her all Terry said. I told her how he said he is interested in having an affair with me. She allowed me to finish my speech before she asked me what I told Terry in reply. I told her that I didn't give him an instant reply. I told her that I told Terry that I needed a week to think about it. My sister was very happy with the reply I gave Terry. She said Terry appeared to her like a nice and honest guy. She said he looks to her like someone that can take very good of a woman. She said the ball is in my court. I should do what I think is the best. She said I should date Terry if I think dating him is the best, or I should reject his proposal if I think rejecting his proposal is the best for me. She said she is good with any decision that I take. I hugged my sister and I appreciated her for always being there for me when I need her. I told her I couldn't have come this far without her. I told her I will continue to love her. I waved her goodbye and I entered my room. I was thinking of calling Terry to appreciate him for taking him out before his call came in. When I saw his call, I hurriedly answered the phone. As soon as I answered the call, I told him I was about to call him before his call came through. He said he just wanted to know if I am fine. I told him I am fine. He said he will allow me to rest so that I would be ready for work the next day. He told me to greet my sister and take care of myself. I told him to take care of himself too before I dropped the call. As soon as I dropped the call, I covered myself in my duvet and I slept off. The next morning, I didn't wake up as early as I should. It took the intervention of my sister to get me up from bed. She kept knocking until I woke up. When I opened my eyes, the time was 6:50 a.m. and I have to be at work by 8 a.m. I hurriedly took my bath and put on my uniform. I called a taxi while I was dressing, so the taxi arrived before I finished putting in my dress. I got to work at exactly 7:50 a.m. I went straight to the manager's office to fill the worker's attendance sheet before resuming at my duty post. While I sat down at my duty post, I couldn't take Terry's thoughts off my head. My mind was already attached to him, but I was still having a second thought whether dating Terry was the best for me. At exactly 12 noon, we went for a lunch break. After I ate at the restaurant, I checked on my phone to see if I have a call that I needed to return before I returned to my duty post. When I opened my phone lock, I saw 2 missed calls and 2 text messages on my phone. I checked my phone and I noticed that it was Terry that called and he was the one that sent the text message. I immediately returned his call. I told him I didn't pick his call because I was at my duty post. I told him that the rules and regulations of our organization do not allow us to pick calls when we are on duty. I told him I can only talk to him during lunch break or when I am at home. Terry apologized and promised not to call me during work hours. He said he will only call me when he is sure that I am on lunch break. I told him that my time was up and I have to return to my duty post before I ran afoul of the law. I told him to take of himself. I told him I will call him when I get home. I closed from work at around 7 a.m. like I always do. I was about to board a taxi when I saw Terry's call. I didn't want to answer the call at first, but I later answered it. When I answered the call, I intended to tell Terry to call me back when he gets home, but Terry shocked me. He said I should meet him in front of my workplace. I asked him what he was doing in front of my workplace. He said he left his workplace very early, so he decided to take me home. I rushed down to meet him. I was very happy because I wouldn't go through the stress of waiting for a taxi. When I got there, Terry was in his car waiting. I opened the door and I entered. I asked him why he had to drive a long distance to pick me from work. Terry said he could do anything for me. He said picking me up from work is the least thing he could do to show me that he loves me. While Terry was driving home, we talked about many things. When we were about 2 minutes to my home, Terry told me that he will like me to visit him at his home on Sunday. He said he will be happy if I show up. He convinced me to the extent that I could not decline his invitation. Terry doped me at my house and he drove off. My sister noticed that I arrived home earlier than I used to. She asked me what happened. I told her that I didn't wait for a taxi today. I told her Terry surprised me by showing up at my workplace. I told her how Terry insisted that he was going to drive me home. I told her he didn't allow me to decline because he was already at my office before he called me. My sister couldn't believe it. She kept reminding me what she told me about Terry. She said she was convinced that Terry is a nice guy the first day she saw it. She asked me if I have yielded to his proposal. I told her I haven't, but I will by the weekend because he has invited me to his house. You could see the joy on my sister's face. She was very happy for me. She was happy that I was getting into a serious relationship for the first time. The D-Day came and it was as if I have never seen a man before. I had already called Terry the previous that I would be coming to his house by 11 a.m. I was already up from my bed at around 7 a.m. I woke up that early because I had to do some laundry before I leave. I went to my sister's room to collect her laundry clothes because she was preparing breakfast. I wanted to take the stress off her. I finished the laundry at exactly 9 a.m. I was about to enter the bathroom to take my bath when my sister called me that breakfast is ready. I told her to eat hers while I take my bath. After taking my bath, I went to the kitchen to take my breakfast. My sister asked me what I wanted to do next. I told her I was going to my room to dress up for my outing. My sister said she will follow me to my room. She said she will choose the outfit that I will wear to Terry's house. I didn't have any option other than to allow her. She finally chose an outfit for me and I put it on. I had already called a taxi while I was eating. The taxi man arrived at the exact time I finished dressing. I waved my sister goodbye while I was about to enter the taxi. She waved back at me and she told me to take care of myself. I arrived at Terry's house at exactly 11:10 a.m. He was already waiting for me at his gate because I called him a few minutes before we got to his house. When I alighted from the taxi, Terry kept complimenting my beauty and my outfit. He said I look exactly like an angel that I was named. We both entered his sitting room and I sat on the couch. Terry asked what I wanted but I told him I ate before I left home. Terry was not happy with my response. Because I didn't want him to be sad, I told him to bring me a bottle of wine. Terry brought the wine to where I was sitting and sat close to me. He asked me if I have accepted his proposal. I told him that I have accepted his proposal because I was convinced that he is a nice guy. Upon hearing what I said, Terry hugged me tightly. I felt comfortable in his arms. When Terry noticed how comfortable I was in his arm, he kissed me and I kissed him too. We started kissing passionately on the couch. After kissing for some minutes, Terry carried me into his bedroom. We continued our kissing and romancing on Terry's bed. We romanced each other to the extent that none of us could hold it anymore. Terry and I undressed and we had sex. I experienced what I have never experienced in my lifetime and it was very interesting. After the sex, I entered his bathroom and took a shower with Terry. While we were taking shower, we were still kissing. After taking the shower, I dressed up and Terry drove me home. Since that day, I have not been able to take Terry's thoughts off my head. Our love waxed stronger, which was what prompted me to have a tattoo of Terry on my chest. When I told him that I wanted to have his tattoo on my chest, he was very happy. I told my sister about it too. She said if that is what I want, there is nothing she can do. She said I should just do what is best for me. The next Sunday that I was off duty, Terry took me to the tattoo center himself. He said he wants to be the first person to see how the tattoo. 5 months after I tattooed Terry's name on my chest, Terry was involved in a ghastly car accident somewhere in Miami. Terry and his friends were traveling from Kentucky to Miami when they had that accident. Neither Terry nor his friends survived the car accident. 2 of his friends died on the spot, while Terry died after the 3rd day of the accident in a hospital. Since Terry died, I cannot stop thinking about him. Anytime I look at the tattoo on my chest, I just wish I could see or talk to Terry one more time. Death, they say, is inevitable, but it took away the person I loved most away from me. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thought on this.
How I celebrated 2020 and what I'm willing to do in 2021. Hi guys, I am Tess. I am the last of a family of 5 children. The girls were 3, and the boys were 2. I was the 3rd girl and the last child, and I must confess it had its advantages. I had the protection and favor of my elder siblings while growing up. If I was denied anything by either of them, I just had to go the next, and even I was still denied, I knew that I would get it before going to the 5 of them. On one rare occasion, it seemed as though they all ganged up on me as I was surprised when they all turned me down. Well, I always had a backup plan, Mummy or Daddy. It was really incredible being the major object to favor. During my childhood days, I was not given much chores as the others. I had the luxury of sitting in front of the television with a bowl of popcorn, while others cleaned the house, and if I was asked to assist during my time out, I simply cried my eyes out until either Mummy or Daddy intervened by asking that I be left alone. I was not being spoilt. I was simply enjoying what every child who has siblings older than her should enjoy. It was as I advanced to my teenage years that I discovered that everything with an advantage equally has a disadvantage. I was sent on errands around the house at odd times by everyone. I was called to bring this, take this, pick this, get this, wash this, and every other annoying message which seemed to be available each time I wanted to have some fun. My strategy of crying and making noises just to alert Mummy and Daddy that it was time to come to my rescue seemed to now work very well against me, as they only ended up getting mad at me for my disobeying my elders who did things for me when I couldn't do them myself. They made me understand that I was now grown up and needed to assume a level of responsibility around the house just as everyone else did. It was during those times I greatly wished that I was still the baby Tess that everyone wanted to pamper. The one-time center of attention for a favor now turned to the object used in getting little things done. Nevertheless, I would never trade my siblings for another. It was nice to have people that are ahead of me because it gave me an opportunity to learn from their mistakes and experiences. They always seemed to have opinions on every experience I was going through, and most times they would tell me how certain things were likely going to play out. My both parents were huge, and so we all looked bigger than our ages. At 20 years of age, my eldest sister, Nellie, could easily be mistaken for Daddy's wife. She even behaved like a mummy, assistant mummy. She always looked out for the welfare of the rest of us. She wanted everything done in order, just as Mummy would. She was neat, and would always frown at anyone who dropped a waste anywhere, or anyone who moved past something that was out of place. She was articulate and precise. In the absence of Mom, she assumed the responsibility of dishing out chores and making sure that each one of us does thorough work. She always tried as much as possible to avoid mistakes, and she got so hard on herself when she did. Nellie was good at studying people, and often used her head rather than her heart. She was not always moved by emotions and sentiments. She was the toughest of us all, and she always demanded respect from the rest of us. This was where she often had issues with Richard. Richard was the second child and first boy. He was 2 years younger than Nellie, but you would think he was married. At 22, Richard looked so mature that if you visited our house when Dad was away, you would think that he was the man of the house, even though he never acted so. He loved his space and hated being bossed around, something Nellie often did. This was no wonder they always had issues that we had all gotten used to. Richard was a fine young man who was heavily built. He had no issues getting the attention of ladies. On several occasions, Richard had been approached by women who were far older than him. There was one time he was even approached by a married lady who was twice his age, and all she just wanted was sex. He, however, how best not to set a bad example for the younger ones who were behind him, so he often had his escapades with ladies outside the home. Patty was next in line. She was 2 years younger than Richard. She easily got along with people and had a great distaste for arguments. If you ever got into an argument with Patty over something that was rightfully hers, she was likely going to let it go. She always loved a serene and peaceful atmosphere. Patty was emotional and naive, and one could easily take advantage of her. It was no new thing to see Patty crying over a guy. She never did seem to learn her lesson though, as the next guy who shows her a little bit of affection was sure to win her heart. 2 years after Patty was born, my parents welcomed Tim into the family. Tim was a good friend to keep, but a very bad for to have. He could love as easily as he could hate. Tim always saw the good in everybody, until he was shown their bad side. He was the kind of person who wouldn't judge another based on rumors. Tim had no issues trusting you. But when you betrayed his trust, one thing was certain: you had found a foe for life. It took about 3 years before I was introduced into the family tree, and that was because my parents never really planned for me. I came anyhow. Though I wasn't planned for, I was welcomed. My parents, however, took measures to ensure I had no one behind me. We were a typical family, just like everyone else. We had the regular fights and misunderstandings which children in other homes had. However, one thing which was clear to outsiders was that they were not permitted to mess with either of us. An assault on one of us was an assault on all of us, and you could be sure that we would always react as a group. One time when Patty was 7 years old, she was constantly picked on by a bully in her class. He constantly took a part of her lunch. Patty was not suited for a fight, so she constantly let him have his way. This bully threatened to severely deal with her if she reported to anyone. She suffered quietly, not because she was afraid of what would become of her when she told her elder siblings, but she knew what awaited the bully once Nellie and Richard, who were 9 and 11 years then, get to know. Her fears soon came to pass when the news of her maltreatment got to Nellie through a friend of Patty's. Nellie wasn't going to wait around to confirm it the rumor was true. She immediately marched down to the playground and saw crying as the bully was about to leave with part of her lunch. Like a hungry lioness who just found a defenseless lamb, Nellie pounced on him with all of her aggression and might. The bully couldn't tell what had hit him, but it hit him really hard. Patty and the few kids around stood watching. Nellie couldn't be stopped, and most of the kids didn't even want her to, because they have been victims of this notorious bully. Some kids ran to call any teacher in sight, while others ran to call Richard to come and stop Nellie. Richard was in class when he was told that Nellie was fighting at the playground. Richard quickly rushed to the playground, and rather than stop Nellie, who was beating up the bully, he immediately joined her to inflict more pain. The teachers finally arrived and separated the fight. That day, our parents were called alongside the parents of the bully who had just lost 3 teeth. Upon inquiry, the school authorities discovered that Patty was not the only victim of this bully who had constantly picked on kids. He was suspended from school for 4 weeks while Nellie and Richard were sent on detention for taking laws into their hands. When the bully returned, he avoided Patty like plague. Even though we watched out for each other, and we often spent time together, there were still moments where the girls had secrets that they were not willing to share with the boys, and of course, there were things too that the boys didn't share with everyone else, so you could find the boys alone, separated from the girls. I, however, had the privilege of listening to both parties when I was allowed. I was the baby of the house after all. We all knew that Patty was vulnerable because of her personality, and could easily be taken for granted, so Nellie decided to help her whenever she passed through any crisis. She acted as a guide, especially when it came to relationship issues with boys. What Nellie did for Patty, Richard did for Tim. Although Tim was more outspoken than Patty, it seemed as though he could sometimes be as naive, especially when it had to do with ladies, and so Richard, who was ahead of him in every way, equally acted as a guide. It didn't matter what advice and guidance these two had, they always seemed to fall prey. There was a guy who moved into the area where we stayed. He was 23 years old. He was cute, and the kind of guy every girl would die to have, and Patty was one of the girls. Ladies began flocking around him. Patty felt like the luckiest girl in the world when he started making advances at her. what others were running after, came running after her. She felt special, and that feeling was what got her into a mess. He was all Patty could, and would choose to think about. She went out of her way to please him as much as she could. Nellie knew this guy was no good. She had been there before, and she saw the red flag. She tried telling Patty to take things slow because not much was known about this guy. I watched as Patty defended him. She said his name was Matt, and he wasn't just any guy. Nellie knew that at this point, nothing she said to Patty would be welcomed by her, so she left her. It wasn't long before the things Nellie said started coming to light. Matt always had one sorry story, or the other to tell, so that he could feed off Patty's allowance. Whenever he took her out on a date, he always seemed to have misplaced his wallet, which he claimed contained his credit card. Patty would end up paying. This was just his move, so he could have a free lunch or dinner because he was totally broke and did not know where his next meal was going to come from. He always claimed to have rich parents who were out of town, and he never failed to make empty promises to Patty which he never fulfilled. He promised to buy her the world when she would be celebrating her 18th birthday. However, 3 days before her birthday, he stopped talking to her. She tried getting in touch with him, but it was not possible. On her 18th birthday celebration, he was nowhere to be seen. Patty was furious, disappointed, and heartbroken. How could he disappoint her on the very day that she needed to show him to everyone? She just hoped that he had a good explanation. She couldn't imagine her elder sister Nellie being right all along. It was the day after her birthday celebration that he sent a message to her through one of his friends. He claimed to have been in the hospital for 3 days, and only just got back home. Patty felt bad, guilty, and sad. She became angry at herself for thinking that Matt may have played her when he was in the hospital all along. She quickly over his place. She was determined to stand by his side. Before leaving his place, she gave him part of the money she had received the previous day during her birthday celebration. It was when she had almost boarded a cab that she discovered she had left her mobile phone behind at Matt's place. It was when she was about knocking on the door that she overheard his discussions with his friends. He was not ill. He never was. It was his plan all along. He had no money to buy her the things that he had promised her for a birthday, and so he had to devise a means to stay away. He equally did not want to take the risk of being seen by some of Patty's friends who were equally his victims. He equally knew that Patty would get some monetary gifts at her birthday, and he wanted to have a share, and now he had. He had killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Patty listened with teary eyes as Matt and his friends made jest of her. They called her stupid, naive, crazy, and delusional for falling for Matt. They said that they were amazed to see someone this big with no brains to match her size, and it was only a matter of time before Matt would sleep with her. Patty was hit hard, and her wound was too deep. She had heard enough. She would probably die right there if she heard any more. She quickly turned around and picked up a cab. The cab driver really felt sorry for Patty as he drove her back home. She was weeping as though she wanted to die from it. The driver, who was seriously concerned about what might have happened to her, failed at getting an answer from her. Immediately he got to our house, she ran out of the car and made her way into the house without paying him. We were all in the sitting room, Dad, Mom, and the rest of us, when she ran past everyone without even waiting around to greet them. It was clear that something was wrong. But before we could get to her, she locked the door and began crying profusely. It was just then that the cab driver came knocking on the door and politely told us Patty was yet to pay him. He did get his money, but it was after he was made to answer a series of questions about what happened to Patty. He told us all he knew, and from all indications, he was telling the truth. Nellie knew that whatever it was that put Patty this way had to do with Matt. We tried getting Patty to open up. It had been a whole day since the incident. She had missed dinner, and breakfast was about missing lunch. We all took turns to appeal to her to come out. She seemed not to listen to anybody, not even Mom, and Dad could get her to open up. It was Nellie who eventually had her open up after she told her that she knew Matt was behind this whole thing. When Patty came out, she looked really pale, and so before asking her any questions, we all pleaded with her to eat some food. After eating, Nellie helped clean her up before Mom and Dad put her to bed. She needed rest. A lot of it. Richard and Tim eagerly waited just to know who or what had caused their sister such pain. They just needed a name and address. It was an hour before dinner time that Patty woke up and was finally ready to tell us what happened. Patty had barely gone halfway with her story when Richard and Tim made for the door, and we all knew their destination and next action. It took a lot for Daddy to restrain them both. Our dad was a cop, and so, he always wanted things done by the book. He had always been against us taking laws into our hands. After listening to Patty, Daddy noted that this was a fraudulent case of manipulation, one that the law seriously frowned at. Our dad did, however, note that, although Patty had just been victimized, there was no evidence to support her claim, and it was just her word against Matt. If we were going to get justice for Patty, then we needed to beat Matt at his own game. We needed some evidence. Patty was then made to call Matt that evening to tell him that she had left her phone at his place. Patty played her part so well that Matt didn't suspect a thing in the world. She asked about his health, about his friends, then asked to take him out for lunch the next day, so that he could bring her mobile phone along. It was the kind of opportunity Matt always desired, and so he readily accepted. The plan was to avoid going to his house now he was seen for what he was, a snake. Dad had to warn Patty against being in a private area with him because he could rape her. While she played her part, Dad would do some investigations just to know more about Matt. We all knew that Patty was going through a lot, and so we were very determined to give her all the love and support that she would need. She officially became the baby of the house on a temporal basis. Nellie knew that Patty had to set her emotions aside if she was going to successfully make Matt pay. She knew that Patty, who was very emotional, would find it very difficult playing Matt's own game of deception when she was still into him, so to help Patty, she called her that into her room that evening for a chit-chat. I was already with Nellie when she entered the room. She immediately began apologizing to Nellie for not taking her advice when she gave it. Nellie couldn't hide a grin as she told Patty that she was never angry at her. I listened as she told Patty that she only knew it would turn out this way because she had been there before. Just like Patty, she had been hurt severely in the past, that she had now become familiar with the red flags and could tell someone who was a scam from a mile away. Nellie said that the knowledge she had gained from her bitter experiences made her decide to always put her head before her heart. She had toughened up over time. She now began advising Patty and me against tolerating what we don't like from a guy. She said that when you get a little bit tolerant, they end up trying to take you for a ride, and so, if at any point in any relationship we become uncomfortable, we should immediately call it quits. There should always be a line which we shouldn't let the guys cross. She then further gave an instance of her experience with a guy 3 years ago. She said that when the guy wanted to date her, she never liked him because he was dirty. He had a terrible body odor that his cologne couldn't hide. When he opened his mouth to profess his undying love, she could only smell death. His breath stank. She saw that they were not compatible in any way. She took cleanliness very seriously, and he just seemed too comfortable in filth. It was a red flag, which meant that she shouldn't go further, but because almost all of her friends were having boyfriends, she didn't want to feel left out, and so, she just tolerated him. It was when she was invited for a romantic dinner at his place that she knew the relationship was doomed. There was nothing romantic about the atmosphere. He was dirty to the bones and never seemed to care. This was more than she bargained for, and she wasn't having any more of it. It was when she told him that she couldn't continue anymore that he decided to rape her, and although he did not succeed because she raised an alarm, the incident traumatized her for a while. Nellie was a great sister, and she deserved every respect we gave her. Her words of encouragement were all Patty needed to hear. I usually enjoyed the times when we bonded like this. I never told anyone that I already had a guy who wanted me to be his girlfriend. Thanks to Nellie, I then knew that it wouldn't work because of the red flags I saw. Her advice then made me realize what my vision for the coming year 2021 was, growing in self-love and personal development, and I was determined to start actualizing the vision from the year 2020 that was soon going to be over. During lunch with Matt the next day, Patty was really composed. The words of Nellie last night had a great impact on her. She had rehearsed everything she was going to say, and how she was going to behave during lunch. As usual, she paid for the food with the money Dad had given her. Since the whole family was now involved, Dad and Mom made sure that she had the money needed to satisfy Matt's greed. Matt pounced on the dish without mercy. It was when he had eaten to his satisfaction that he then began reassuring Patty of his undying love. He claimed that he had been telling his imaginary rich parents about her, and they were eager to meet her when they got into town. Patty acted as she fell for his story, and even though Matt tried taking her back to his place, she claimed that she had to pick up groceries for Mom and that she had already overstayed. Before leaving, she gave him some money before he started making up stories. Later on during dinner, Daddy told us that he had been checking up the public records available, but nothing came out of it. There was no record of any Matt Delaney in the system. Something was not right. Why was there no information on him? It was at that point that my dad knew the case was more serious than we had taken it to be. He involved the state by officially opening a false identity and fraud case against the alleged Matt Delaney, and investigations officially began. Even though we were terrified at the suggestion that Patty took the risk of placing her life in the hands of a person she didn't know, we were relieved to learn that we now had the resources of the government about disposal. We, however, knew that we needed to play safe. We needed to be careful about the way we were using Patty as a tool in the investigation. It took 3 weeks before the breakthrough came. There had been 3 unsolved murder cases in various parts of the states. The victims who were usually raped before being killed were between 18 and 24 years of age. The pattern was always the same, but no matter how hard the authorities tried, it always led to a dead end. Finally, a shred of evidence had surfaced, and it led the investigators right into our city. After forensic scientists carried out several tests, the result matched the DNA which was obtained from the private part of one of the victims. It was while going through the file that my dad discovered a familiar face. It was Matt. However, although the face was the same, the name was not. The name was Todd Humphrey. There were equally two other faces alongside Todd. Patty was called in to see if she could identify any of the faces. When she got to the station, just as my dad had said, she identified Todd Humphrey as Matt, and she even went further to identify the remaining two faces as his friends who occasionally visited Todd. The cops immediately made a warrant for their arrest, but they were going to be strategic about it. The plan was to arrest the three friends at the same time, but it was difficult getting them to be in the same place. Two of the friends of Todd were arrested while on their way back from getting supplies, and several illegal items such as guns, ammunition, cocaine, and various fake passports containing their names. Upon interrogation, they both agreed to be involved in the killing of the three murder victims. They claimed that they would study the victims for weeks before either of them would try to establish a romantic relationship with the victim. They equally gave accounts of how they would dupe the victims of large sums of money, and would eventually introduce the victim to drugs, but if the victim refused to be initiated into the use of drugs, they then knew that they stood a chance of getting reported to the authorities, and so, had no other option than to end the life of the victim. This, they did by taking turns to rape her before killing her. They noted that all three of their victims had refused to take drugs. The police raided Todd's house, but he wasn't there, just as his friends had said. They said that they have certain times which they communicated, and if there was no communication from anybody, then it was an indicator that something had gone wrong. It was when they were about communicating with Todd that the cops showed up, and Todd would probably have gone into hiding. The cops further questioned them to know if they had any idea where Todd might be hiding, but they said that they had decided against letting each other know their whereabouts, just in case the police caught up with any of them. It was at this point that the police knew that Patty was their biggest chance of catching Todd, but they knew that if they alerted the neighborhood, he would be certain that he was wanted, and would further try to evade them, so they waited to see if he would contact her, and he did. Todd called Patty and claimed to be in danger. He said that some persons were after his life. They wanted to kidnap and make some money off of him because of who his parents were. He asked Patty for some money to get out of the city but promised to send it back to her when he got together with his parents. Patty said that she could have the money ready by 2 p.m. the following, but she didn't know how to reach him. He said that he couldn't disclose it to her for her own safety. However, he told her to get ready by 2 p.m., as he was going to call her to give her directions on where to meet. As soon as he hung up the call, the cops who had been listening began setting plans in motion. The money was made available to Patty, who equally had a tracker placed on her. The cops would have stationed themselves around the area where she would be meeting up with him if he had disclosed the location. But he was smart enough not to. He called Patty 2 hours before the agreed time. This action almost jeopardized the plan of the cops, who were not yet ready, as they thought that they still had 2 more hours. Patty was left with no other option than to go without the cops, as any delay would get Todd suspicious. Although all hope was not lost as she had the tracker on, the cops were far behind. Patty soon found herself in a popular clubhouse filled with all manner of people. It was a place she had never been to. It was while she stood inside looking lost that she received a text asking her to come to a particular room upstairs. It was in there that she met Todd. He observed that she was not as excited as before, and when he asked her what the matter was, she said she was only really sad that he would be leaving. He seemed to fall for the lie, even though she was afraid, as every other person who was alone with a murderer would. After she gave him the money, he wanted something more. He wanted what he had long desired. But this was something that she didn't bargain for, so she told him that she needed to go home before they realized that she had been gone for too long. He wasn't buying this now. This was the last time that he was ever going to set his eyes on her, and he would have his way, one way or another. He reached for her and forcefully started taking off her clothes. When she resisted, he hit her really hard, and that was when the tracker fell off. Todd was furious. He knew that Patty was a means of getting to him. He immediately pulled a gun. But before he could pull the trigger, the cops broke into the room, and a gunfight ensued. He was shot multiple times to the head, and he was pronounced dead on the spot. But not after a shot fired by him hit Patty on her chest. We all waited in the hospital for the doctor's verdict. When he came out of the theater, he said that Patty would live. The bullet had missed her heart. She was stabilized. We felt great relief. The fear of losing Patty had cast a shadow of gloom over all of us, But now, we were grateful for the light of hope shining. Patty returned home 3 months later. To celebrate her return, I sensitized the girls in my school on the need for self-love and emotional maturity. By 2021, I would set up a GoFundMe account for Patty that will enable us to generate the funds to reach out to more girls. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me? What would you do if you were me? What would you do if you were me?